And we're back with another one. Therapist Mark Tovar in the house. I want to say a big welcome to Mark. Thank you for joining me in the studio,
Absolutely.
man. You know, we put all this together to have a great guest like you come in. I think every time I get a chance to be around you, I'm built up, I'm encouraged, I'm inspired. Good. I think some people know this, some people may not. You actually helped me write my second book, so I got a book. Don't leave here without that book that I thanked you in the opening to. So I just want to say thank you for hopping in the studio today, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. Any chance to come by just to hang out?
Yeah, man.
Is a good time. So even when you ask me, hey, can you come on? I'm like, always.
Come on.
I kind of said it like we were you began this journey like a year before I did. I've been in it 5 years now. You must be in the coaching realm for what, at least 7, maybe going on 8?
Yeah, it depends where you quantify it, right? So like the business started in 2019, so this is going to be 5 years.
Yep.
The other side of it, which was doing it at Nationwide, was doing that for 5 years.
Right.
So do you count Nationwide? Do you not? It was still coaching. It was call center coaching for people's personal development in their career, and then also on the phones to offer better customer service. So, again, if you count those together, it's 9. If you count some of the church stuff, then it's probably beyond that.
Yep.
But the business is officially going to be 5 years old.
Yep. And I think that's when we first started. And as you began, you were one of the first people to put me on a podcast.
Hey.
And so I always kind of, you always open the door, introduce me to people, and were very generous with your time and your talent. So that
respect.
You will always be entitled to the seat in my arena anytime you're ready.
Come on, brother. Come on. I appreciate the encouragement. Mm-hmm. Now, since the last time we were together, I mean, you've had major life events take place. Some people who are connected with you know over the last 12 months, your wife passed.
Yes.
So how has that been for you? You know, you processing that.
Mm-hmm.
How's it been in general? Has it been especially helpful being a therapist, so you kind of have the tools to kind of identify the process of grief and loss and all of that?
It definitely helps being able to have sat with so many people previous to my tragedy in their tragedy. So right now I think I'm on 25 years of therapy.
Let's go.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's a real chance to go, okay, you've sat with people in their pain. Let's see if this is as you said it was. Because now it's personal, right? And I was telling you before we got on, I hadn't spoken about it a lot in public. First of all, because my wife, even though she's gone, she was extremely private.
Sure.
And she wasn't one to. So I always wanted to honor that and be like, look, don't be putting this a lot in my articles or on my podcast to try and look like I'm, trying to make something out of it. So I was like, let me lay back a little bit. And then I had a hypothesis or a theory about how this was going to go for me.
Yeah.
But I also thought, let me try it out for a little bit because I might be wrong.
Sure. What was the theory? What was the hypothesis?
The theory was, for me, since I am so always talking to people about, look, you've got choices, right? So if something happens in your realm that you don't have control over, love is never a wrong thing. So if you're somebody who gives and receives love and high energy, then theoretically there shouldn't be a moratorium on the time that you need to sit and grieve. But that's what we do in the United States. The understanding is, look, if you lose somebody that's important to you, you better let people see that it's important to you. We expect you to be really, really sad.
Yeah.
For a set amount of time. We don't know what that time is, but we'll let you know. Right?
Right.
And my thought was like, wait, one of us is no longer here. What am I going to get out of grieving this in the way of that? Like if I just stood still and was like, I must wait my time. It seemed to me that if you were in pain and that was challenging to you, if you could be involved in things that were positive or growing, wouldn't that be helpful?
Yeah.
So I decided to do it this way. Yes, I'm going to have my grief. It's going to be extremely private. I'm going to grieve when I need to grieve. I'm also going to go out and get an ice cream cone. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do all the social things that I maybe wouldn't have done previously.
Yeah.
So my hypothesis was that you could grieve the loss of the most important thing in your life and also maintain this thought of moving forward.
Yes. That's something as I try to imagine and put myself in your shoes, right? Anybody who's married, there's a high possibility that you eventually will be without the other one. There's some people who die at the same time. Some people would die separately, and many people die separately. And then so there will be an entry back into singlehood once again. And as I've played that situation, in my wife and I know some couples might be like, hey, let's never talk about it. Don't even think about it.
You should talk about it.
We're on that side of thinking about, hey, like, what are your thoughts about this? Or what do you think post this? Or like, what are your perspectives about remarriage? And do you feel like you have to say the answer that I want to hear, or think about what's truly best for you? And so we've had those conversations, and or even the idea of her family seeing me process, whether it be happy or move forward, like, what is that like? You know what I'm saying?
Super big. That was a major part of this whole grief process. Is even though, listen, her family has been wonderful, supportive. They have nothing but kind things to say about me.
Yeah.
I always still felt like it would be really hard if I was any member of that family to eventually see me out with anybody else doing anything else.
Yes.
That wasn't with their person.
Right.
And so for me, it was just kind of like, I had to think about, okay, you're gonna move on with your life and you're gonna do things, but I didn't want it to also be like, well, great, they lost a daughter and now they've lost a son-in-law too.
Yeah.
So there's this line that's like, look, I want to call, I want to check in on people, I want to, but I also want to give them that space to be like, look, in 2-3 years down the road, if I'm coupled up with somebody, I don't want to be bringing them by the house and be like, hey, sisters, look at what.
Right.
Because I would be like, I don't know what that's like I can only speak what it's like for me.
Yeah.
But I'm also empathetic enough to understand that might be really hard.
Sure.
To watch as a family member. So I want to be able to, and like I said, this was a guess for me.
Yeah.
So, and if you've never done that before, you have no way of knowing, is this going to go the way you think it's going to go? Let's say had it gone wrong, or had it not gone that way, then you're kind of on the hook. Because then they were like, oh, I thought you said, it was okay and you were going to be fine. And
if it went wrong, like what? Like, spell that out real quick.
If things go wrong, it means you get stuck in your grief. What we call, as therapists, what we call simple grief, which is like a normal grief cycle that you move through and you don't get stuck in. Difficult grief or complicated grief is that in which you go through it, but you don't really get through certain pieces of it, so you find yourself kind of stuck.
Yeah.
It might look like me still having everything of hers out 2 or 3 years later.
Yes.
Not taking her clothes out of the closet, being very upset if somebody moved something in the house. It can take on a whole bunch of other ways. And let me be very clear.
Yeah.
Some people need more time, and some people need different things. And this is in no way to say you have to go through this grief process like that. Some people are like, look, it's going to take me, and they'll tell you, this might take me years. They say, I'm just going to kind of fold back a little bit, and I'm not going to engage in society. And that's okay. But for me, it was almost the direct opposite. I went, I have to live, and I have to do this in a way, in honor to that person. I have to do it better than I would have done it the way it is, because look, there's one of us left.
Yeah, that's right.
And so live your life in a way that would be a testament to that other person, to say, I'm going to do the things that I know you would have wanted me to do, the things that, she wanted me to be very successful, both in the coaching and the counseling game. I'm still dedicated to that.
Yes, sir.
And so now when that is, there's always a piece of gratefulness, because as you know, when I began my journey, much like for you, when you began your journey, your wife said, look, I believe in you. I believe you can do this.
Yes.
I needed that.
Yeah.
Because you can't, being married, you can't just step out on, well, I guess you could. I don't know how that would work. But for me, I needed her to say, I believe in you. I know you can do this. Go do this.
Yes, sir.
And she did.
Yeah.
And not everybody.
And she was in the mix. She was doing the graphic design and helping out behind the scenes and doing so much to support you.
Yeah. And so now it's like, all right, now I'm in it again, making sure that I deliver on those things that were, that we talked about. And so at the end, grief always doesn't look like somebody tearing up all the time. There were times of extreme quietness in the house.
Yes.
The quietness is almost deafening. If that makes sense. Like the stillness when that person is no longer there is extremely evident.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was a moment of clarity there that I was like, oh, I need to write some stuff down.
Yeah.
Because it was a clarity that I think eventually I thought the busyness of the world will come in again, and then my priorities again will start shifting back to the business or what bills I owe or what. But in that moment when you're like, whoa, you have nothing, all that was important to you was taken. Now what's important to you?
Yeah.
And then you go, let me write these down. Let me write them down quick because I don't want to forget.
Yeah.
Because I will. Because you're human.
So then the question that was stirring in. So I was at my dentist a few months back, and they did a teeth cleaning or whatever. And I don't know how it came up, but I was like, hey, like, do y'all like clean each other's teeth to like and then save money? You know what I'm saying? Or not use your insurance or whatever. Or like,
Can you?
Or like my barber, before I was doing the bald thing, my barber, I was like, hey, like, who cut your hair? And he's like, oh, this guy over here. And then we just trade. So like, we don't charge each other. It's just a trade of services. So I bring that back to like you going through that. Therapy, one, are you somebody who, again, you had this massive loss? Is that you going to a therapist? And then how do therapists do it? Do y'all kind of do an exchange where, hey, you go for an hour, I go for an hour? Or is that like more taboo? Or tell me what that's
generally
like.
You won't see that. What we do is we have a trusted circle of friends. But the thing is, I may know someone in Austin. They may know somebody somewhere else. So you will almost never see therapists therapizing each other.
Well, it won't be reciprocated back and forth. Okay.
No, we don't want it.
Yeah.
And it would be like, I know what technique you're using. Don't do that. Like, don't do that. That was like, third year. The psychoanalytic. I know that. Yeah. So you don't want to do that. I wish we could because we joke.
Right,
we're like, wow, we would really save each other a lot of money. But then we're like, no, you know what? And I've purposely done this when I go to it. I have a certain type of therapist I need if I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I got to have that 65-year-old silverback male.
What?
Here's a
silverback male? The silverback. My brain has thought about the silverback gorilla.
Yeah. The silverback, the way I define this is like, look, if I'm going to somebody, I need the old sage that has been around the forest so long.
Yeah.
And he is really, or she is in the top of their field. They are so wise that it would not be wise to you to do anything but sit there at their feet and listen. Yeah. So my therapist has got to be old.
Yeah.
And I have to know that they know their stuff.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'll try and jump in the mix.
Right.
And I don't want to do that. I'm here to receive healing.
Yeah.
So I'll stay humble and, And the problem with the silverback folks is that they die a lot. Like they're older people. I'm running out of people. Because they might retire from the profession or they may pass away. But I really find the elders of the tribe.
Yeah.
To be, and people are like, oh, you're so animated and verbal, and you don't want. No, I want somebody to be like, young man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need you to shh, and I'm like. Right? This guy just know how I am.
Now, but the question I have is, so you went through this loss. Do you have losses or things that you go through and you're going, hey, this isn't one where I'll go to a therapist for because I know what to look for, I know protocol, and I know where I'm going to be in a different season. So, like, again, maybe you can speak about it generally. Does a therapist think that way? They going, hey, this loss, I think I know what maturity looks like navigating through it, and I'm going to give myself grace for if I have any setbacks, but I'm going to know when to pull the trigger or pull the lever of let me put myself in therapy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the wise therapist never says that.
They just do it. They just
Well, because we don't know when we're gonna.
yeah.
So if I'm already precluding, well, I don't need a therapist because this is grief and I should know how it goes. Remember, I had a hypothesis. I was fully aware to know, wait a minute, if this doesn't go the way I think it's going to go, there's going to be a point
Yeah.
where I might have to say, I'm going to need backup here.
Yeah.
I'm going to need backup. And I hope that you're self-aware enough to do that. But as you know, like, does the deacon go to the preacher when the deacon has issues?
Hopefully before.
Or
yeah.
Right. Or does he go, hey, I'm the deacon. I don't want to show my preacher that I'm struggling with this thing because I'm the deacon.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us, if any therapist goes to therapy, we're excited. We're happy.
Yeah.
Because it means that we didn't think that we were being seen as somebody who, well, you shouldn't need therapy. Or, the marriage therapist who's been twice divorced. There's a thing there. And it's like, well, wait. Does that mean he's not a good marriage therapist because he didn't see his own or she didn't see their own? But it's like, wait, it's totally different. Like being a therapist only means this, that you have a set of skills that you apply to certain things. Now, how well you do that or how aware you are when you do that,
yes. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And so then for you, did you create you used the reference earlier of like, if 2 to 3 years from the time of her passing, you were with someone else, for you, is that like, do you give yourself permission to like be well under that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and how does that? So how do you navigate? When's an appropriate time for me to? Again, are you already dating again?
I'm dating again.
Dating again?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm in a relationship.
You're
now.
in a relationship now. Okay, got it. And but is that public or?
Yes.
Is it,
No. Yeah. It's public.
It's public. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, as public as it can be. It's Facebook. It's Facebook official.
Facebook official. There we go. Okay.
But I took some time before I did that because again, I wanted to make sure first of all that I was moving in the right direction, and that I was going to show respect to enough of the family members involved. And and they never said to me, well, you better not do this. Let's make that clear. Like they never, I never set a time, but when I'm off, I know that. And now what would probably stop me from doing that is I think we all have a little bit of ego. So there may have been times in the past, even before this, that counseling would have been helpful, not only for this situation, but for others. And there may have been times where I may have, benefited from it. But it's just like anything else. Like when you get that cramp in your side and you're like, oh, probably should go to the doctor.
Yeah.
But it's just a muscle pull.
Yeah. Then like, do you go, hey, this is something, I'm about to get into the official relationship. Do you go, I'm going to let the family know? Or is like, hey, they're going to find out and I'm not going to be okay responding with maturity? Like, what is that?
Yeah, I think that's the thing I chose, which was just to like, look, I don't think my relationship is any more special than anybody else's, so I didn't feel the need to have to announce.
Sure.
I figured, look, you're going to put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
When I'm out in social situations, you're going to see it. You're going to see things posted. And if you choose to say something, you certainly can. And I would respond well, I think. But I didn't make that as... And look, I'm 48.
Right. You're a grown man.
At some point you go, okay, again, I'm really big on this ego thing. I always tell people, if you haven't read the Ego book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy.
Ego is the Enemy, yes.
Yes. I think that's a really good book to be like, hey, in this whole world of things, how important are you? Watch the ego. Like, the fact that I need to post what I had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Facebook. Is kind of, and I like social media.
Right.
But there's a part of this that's like, look, I have to focus on living life at this moment and not maybe curating what I want people to see. And then as they come to me and as they say things, we'll kind of figure out where we are. So I try not to set too many prescriptive things except to tell people, look, I told people my grief is not going to look like maybe the grief you've expected.
Yeah.
Don't assume that it means I'm not hurting or that there's anything like that. I just don't find a lot of value in getting into this negativity of like this lack of like, oh, this person isn't here anymore, and that means life is less worth it. And you could go that route.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who do. But now I was like, wow, scarcity creates value.
Mm.
So when you see somebody who's not around anymore, you go, I bet there's some things in my life I need to get to and make it count.
Wow.
I need to do better.
Mm-hmm,
I need to be better for me
Yeah.
and for the people that I serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that continues. I hope that clarity
Yeah.
stays with me.
And it's clear that you've stayed in the coaching game, you stayed in the counseling game. How has that any of that shifted or changed, or like whether is the workload like, hey, I want to keep the same workload, or it's shifted since since she's passed? Is what has that been like since then as far as your business goes?
I mean, now I really focus a lot on coaching with executives. I'd like to make that more, but it kind of waxes and wanes. I don't think it's necessarily based on anything that's happened in the past, but I would like to do more coaching at this point just because I am at a point in my life where I feel like there are less regulations in terms of like what you can do, where you can do it, and how you can do it. And I find that is really needed in today's society. People
talk about that. Like in what way? In what way is so the implication of that is counseling is kind of held back.
Yes.
And there's more liberties or freedom in the coaching realm. Talk about what do you see in both of those realms?
I see the counseling realm right now as being highly regulated, which it should be.
Yeah.
And what most people don't know is there's extreme ethics, code of ethics. There's a way in which we can do and which we can't. For instance, as a therapist, I am not allowed to counsel anybody outside the state in which they are out or in, right? So I'm licensed in Texas. That means even if we're good friends and you live in Texas, but let's say next year you move somewhere, not allowed to. No, there's no, unless I'm licensed in that state. That's not happening. And I just find like right now with the way people are moving, a lot of people don't want to be like, oh, I want a whole bunch of counseling sessions. Can we? They're just like, look, I'm struggling with this. What advice would you give? Right? And as a therapist, I have to be really careful. And I even have like separate disclaimers and all these other legalese to say, look, I'm not and you'll hear me say when I'm a coach, I'm not a life coach. I'm very specific. I'm an emotional intelligence coach, and I'm going to teach you the skills of emotional intelligence to decrease stress. And so I'm real tailored in what I'm doing, because there's such a line right now between what you can do therapeutically, and then there's good coaches and there's not great coaches. And there's good therapists and not great therapists. So there's going to be a lot of battles going on between what people think is, and I happen to be one of those people who's a little bit innovative in my approaches. And I don't prescribe to maybe a lot of the strict rulings that people are like, well, counseling can only be done in this way.
Sure.
And so for me, it's a growth mindset. And I know a lot of people who listen to your podcast will understand what I'm talking about when I say, look, this has to grow and change and move. And we have to be receptive to the way people are willing to receive self-help. But if I call it therapy, for some people, that doesn't feel good to them, and they will resist it just because of that name. Right?
Then do you think for you is that an ideal like breakdown? I don't know if you like look at 20 or 30 or 40 clients a week. I don't know if it's whatever that number that is. 25 is an ideal breakdown. Does that mean like, hey, the ideal would be 20 executive coaching, 5 therapy, or what's that ideal breakdown for you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm still working on that. I would love to do maybe 10 hours of coaching, 5 therapy. Because I've done therapy for so long that really now in the areas in which I have to grow is really the emotional intelligence space, which I'm finding tremendous value for myself in that realm. So that's something that I constantly kind of am pushing toward now as I mature in this field. Yes.
And are you seeing? There's a report. I think it was like the WashingtonPost.com had a report that the demand for therapists is greater than ever, and a number of therapists are being booked out again in advance. So, are you seeing that in your personal, in your personal business, and then are you seeing it even among the therapists that you're connected with, and like as far as that demand and advanced booking is happening with maybe everything that's happening in the world with the awareness around mental health. I think Biden had a tweet that said something about the amount of money they're putting toward mental health for children. So are you seeing those same trends in
I think those trends are multifaceted. One of the things is they'll say, well, we're seeing more of a demand. You've also companies, and you can pick your company, there's multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns to say, hey, are you feeling a little sad? You should call a therapist. They can text you. They can do this. They can do that, right? So we're advertising now more, which is boosting demand, right? We're allowing it on different platforms that allows demand, but also the ability to get to a therapist is still relatively difficult. I mean, you have to clear it through your insurance company if you're taking that. And financially, believe it or not, when money gets tight, therapy is the first thing to go.
Is it? Okay.
They're like, can I see you maybe once every 3 weeks? Because once every 2 weeks is, you know, and they're forced to. So I want to make it clear that there may be the need is there, but based on finances and how this person gets to you.
Yeah.
That can also, so I mean, a quick answer is no. I don't find a lot of therapists who are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so full." I don't. That was that way in the pandemic, but I think now we're getting back to like therapists still struggle. They are really out of the health fields. They are the elementary teacher of the group because they tend to work under really tight margins.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot asked of them. Most of the therapists, when you get started, you're in a community agency that doesn't pay a lot. And the thought is, well, you don't do this for the money. You do this because you like people.
Right.
And that kind of pervades. And then we get a lot of therapists who get really, really burned out because they're trying to help a whole bunch of people for not a whole bunch of money. And again, it's careful we don't wear that as a badge of courage because a lot of people could be, yep, I started out in 19, whatever. This was my salary, and they kind of smile. And I'm like, no, don't smile.
Yeah.
Don't smile when you do that because you're telling everybody else that's how to do that. And so now when I coach younger therapists, I'm like, you're going to set your rate. That's the rate you're going to charge because you're good at this. So I'm constantly trying to bring the field along. And it's very, to be honest, one of the things that was helpful was a lot of work that you did in the beginning about money mindset and things that you were talking about, on podcasts and different books that you've written and just discussions we have had about, how you kind of move forward and decide that you're going to go ahead and do this and not pinch every corner possible and just kind of live in that place where you believe you're heading.
Yeah.
This is not training you get as a therapist.
Yeah.
So there are some struggles. And because most of our world is ruled by third-party billers, insurance companies, they are always looking for ways to minimize the payment to the therapist.
God, that's fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating. One of the things I took away from what you said was there might be an artificial inflation of the demand because of all the marketing dollars that go into it. It's like, oh, look at all these people who want therapy. Well, you're spending millions of dollars in marketing. Yeah, it looks as though all these people are looking for therapy, but there's a smaller portion of people that can pay for therapy. There's a smaller portion. There's not even a smaller, a portion of people who can and can't, and another portion who cannot pay. There's some portion who gets start, and then other people who can't even stay doing it because of the pay.
Right.
Okay, got it. Okay, no, that's a very helpful perspective. And then I think it is because of the third party and all of that. Does that mean there's a restriction on what you could do with fees? Like as far as fee management, does that mean you kind of have to be at a certain?
Correct. When you sign, most therapists sign contracts with these. We call it getting paneled, which means we have to write whatever insurance company to be like, will you accept us? When they say yes, they send us back a contract. They say, yes, we'll accept you, and this is what we're willing to pay you per hour. That could be anywhere from $30 an hour to $115 an hour, let's say. And once you sign on that line, that means we're going to send you clients, and that's what you're going to get paid. So can you imagine signing up with two insurance companies who are known in anywhere to be a lower level insurance payment? And that means you have set your ceiling.
Yes.
Until you get good enough to where you don't need those referrals anymore. And that can be a 5-year or more thing. So it is extremely cumbersome.
Yeah.
You have to be very good at administration, or you have to hire somebody who's a medical biller in most cases.
Yes.
You can do it yourself. There are classes and people that I refer to teach you how to do it yourself. But this is not a cash business generally.
Yes.
So you're limited.
Yeah. So then I guess it makes more sense. So I imagine with any setting, there comes a common criticism that comes through. So an example would be a therapist who also has books. Then to the critic would go, oh, they're just trying to make money. But then like the authentic perspective behind them doing again, having a book, having a product, is that they're trying to expand, so they're not living, again, they're not squeezed financially, and they have, they don't have these razor thin margins. They have wider margins in their business.
Exactly. We call it the side hustle.
That side hustle, yes.
Right?
Yes,
and then when you say that, some people are extremely critical of, well, you're not a real therapist because you do side hustle. But if I don't do side hustle, it means my time is a one-on-one exchange, 50 minutes at a time for whatever money is on that contract.
Yeah.
And sometimes 8 clients, 9 clients a day.
Yeah.
In a row.
Yes.
And when I was a young cat, that could sustain me. And now I'm like, boy, I'd like to get up and walk the dog. I'd like to go work out for an hour.
Yeah.
Well, what hour are you going to not get paid to do that, right? So this becomes but I think we're opening up. Like, I have a group of innovative therapists that I meet with once a month.
Yeah.
Where I've just said, look, if you want to come and you want to talk about whatever the side thing you're doing is, and you want to get support for that, we're going to have people here who are either doing it, have done it, or can tell you how to do it. We're just going to share the information.
Yeah.
And it can be done. But if you can't see it, most of the time, you can't be it.
Yeah.
So you got to get people in there that are like, look, I'm a very successful therapist. I take my job very seriously. And I can also do other workshops, public speaking, and those things are fine. And I'm not sacrificing my good as a therapist. I'm not less good of a therapist just because I'm having fun in these other areas. But that takes time.
Yes.
Again, growth mindset, to be like, I'm not taking anything away from anyone by just being the fool me. So long as I disclose that I'm doing that and not, working under a therapist moniker if I'm out it. Let's take Dr. Phil, for instance. Oprah's Dr. Phil, right? Currently, I don't believe he has, unless it's changed, he doesn't have a Texas psychology license. I don't think he re-upped. He doesn't need one. He's Dr. Phil, right? But if he were to see somebody in the office, he would have to disclose, I am Dr. Phil of the Oprah Dr. Phil, and I'm still Dr. Phil, but I'm not licensed in the state to give psychotherapy. And that person may be, oh, that's fine. You're still Dr. Phil.
Right, you got the brand.
Yeah, and we like Dr. Phil, and that's great.
Yeah.
But again, that would be something restrictive on my end that I have to be very clear about how I'm providing services.
Yeah.
And I think that's for the public's protection. And I'm good with it. But I have seen sometimes people get really finicky about how they want to, you can only do this and you can only.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the reasons I had you on today, one, I'm always fascinated by people who are professionally helping people, especially with transformation. You've helped me a ton in the work that you do. And I'm also curious about trends you see in a variety of areas. And one that I was curious about, as one of my other friends who's a therapist, him and I will talk once a week or a couple of times a week, and he was telling me about one of the newer that's supposed to be added, I guess, in the DSM-6 is the next one around the corner.
That's correct.
Is around religious trauma, and I was just curious, like, what trends have you seen throughout your time of like, not it could be trauma, but issues related that happen around religion? What are some things you see? I ask that because a number of my audience comes from that religious background, or that Christian background, and I think about how can we be a part of the preventative situations. Like, not that we want to prevent people from going to therapy, but we want to prevent some of those wounds or problems if they can be avoided from happening. But I was curious, from your perspective, what are some of those problems that are centered around religion that kind of has people, going to therapy for that help and support?
This is a very good question. In fact, we have some therapists who specialize in religious trauma. And one of the reasons is because generally when somebody has what they would consider religious trauma, it is generally a code or a rule of ethics that they have adhered to rather stringently,
Yeah.
usually,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the deal of adhering to those principles
Yeah.
is that people within that family should do no harm,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I see this across every religion I've worked with.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a few.
Yeah.
So Christianity is one of them.
Yeah.
So if you take somebody who's going to devote their life or their intention in living life in a certain way based on these principles,
Mm-hmm.
and then something is amiss,
Yeah.
let's say for whatever reason, by someone within the faith or something they have experienced, this is a very specific kind of trauma because it's almost like they came into this connection with this particular group of people or faith
Yeah.
to avoid pain.
Yes.
And what happened was, for whatever reason, they experienced pain, either real or perceived. I can say, however they perceive it is not important. It's
Yeah.
the fact that they went here specifically to be lifted up and feel as though they were not.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so it's really important because once you go to somebody in that faith, it's usually the case that I will ask them, have you gone to your faith community? Have you asked, did you? Sometimes, very rarely, sometimes they do. And it can be healed within that community. Sometimes they'd be like, look, I just would rather not. I'm not comfortable. I didn't think I would be in this situation, and now I am, so I need an outside perspective.
Yeah.
And I have to be able to honor both of those things. So can it be healed from the community itself? Most certainly.
Yeah.
But it is a thing. It is a thing enough that people should be specialized in it, and there are.
Yeah.
Which is very good, because we need that kind of diversity of thought. If somebody comes to you, regardless of your faith, and says, "Look, I've been a member of this faith community, and I've been harmed," I'm going to tell you to do the same thing that you would want done to you if this was you, which is to say, "Look, tell me about it if you want to, and I will listen.
Yeah.
And then after you tell me how I can help." Right? And not just go to the automatic, well, maybe it was this or maybe it was that. Like, you have an extreme ability to help as that faith community, because that's something they know, and they're going to trust, until there's a reason not to.
Yes.
And not only in religion, also family would be the same thing, right? If you're not mother and father, for instance, let's say we would hold that like we hold our religious principle. We believe that growing up in a family, I should be loved equally by my mother and father, and one doesn't fulfill quite the bill.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I'll have often is somebody come to me and they'll whisper under the breath, "Well, so how's your family?" "That's good, but I don't really get along with my mom." and they're real quiet about it. And then I say, "Well, what, can you back up a minute? I thought I heard something about your mom." And they say it, and then they kind of look at me with the side eye. And I say, is there a reason? Are you worried that I'm going to say something? They say, "Well, most people, when I tell them, they say, well, they are your family, and blood is thicker than water. And I'm sure that they," right? And I'm like, not the way you want to go about it. Look, if you're an adult and you come to me and say, "Look, I've had a number of interactions with my family, and person X, not really healthy for me." I went, "Okay, well, sounds like that's good. Let me know how we could, if you need me to support you, let me know." And then if there's something to be, as long as I don't poke at it, session 2 will be like, "Hey, you remember when I told you I don't get along with my mom? You think maybe I could, should I go home? And then we'll begin this conversation." But you notice how that happened. As a person that is thought of as having the answers, I can't suggest to you that would be a good idea. Now, if you ask me, then we're going to talk a little bit more about it. So if you're a person of faith or family and somebody comes to you ever and says, "This person has not treated me kindly," you go, "I want to hear more about this because I care about you and I don't want you to be harmed. And if there's anything I can do to prevent this harm, you let me know."
Yeah.
And then therapists wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
If everybody could do that, if they could step besides what they believe to be true and just go, well, Derek came to me and he said this.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't fit with the way I understand this, but I care about Derek.
Yeah.
And so, and knowing you as I do, I know that that wouldn't be a topic that you would come by lightly. So if you broach that topic, I'm best advised to just listen.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, one of the scriptures that I'll go to in situations where somebody's telling me about a situation, like step one in our process, it comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 18. It's go talk to that person one-on-one. Can you win them over? Do they listen to you? And if no, then you bring 2 or 3 others and you still go back to them. And then if no, then it's supposed to be before the whole church or before the church. But this idea of a third-party person outside can't resolve the situation between you and that other person. They could help you maybe have some tools to eventually go back. But no, that's a really helpful perspective. But to bring it back to that broader stroke you mentioned of an intense focus and almost like a rigorous, focus on living a righteous life, and then having people go through the disappointment of seeing maybe a leader or somebody within the church community like have a moral failure, and then to process that, there's a massive disappointment, especially if you've had your own personal maybe streak of goodness in your life. So you think, oh, this is possible. Change is possible, or a good life is possible, and you're seeing some of that in your life, and then you go. And you don't maybe see yourself as that big or important, but you see somebody else who's bigger or important, who has a role, who's on stage, who has a microphone, and you watch them fail. Then it could be an identity crisis. I thought all of us lived as rigorous as I was living,
right?
But now it's revealed that you weren't even close to living as rigorous and as righteous as I was living. Again, and it's relative, but.
Right.
But
well, you mentioned identity crisis. Let's take this one step further.
Yeah.
Because right now we're focused on outward. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody else didn't fulfill what happens if you are someone of faith and you consider yourself to be this sort of person, and something happens in your life for whatever reason, and you don't respond in the way that you thought you would.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is to say that you did something that is against the faith or is not.
Yes.
And so now there's a real identity crisis. I have watched that as well. And that is dangerous because then you really have to deal with, well, I did this or I didn't do this.
Yeah.
What does this mean about me as a person? And it could be a leader in a faith community. It could be just a parishioner. But I mean, the tremendous weight that's like, wow, I'm disappointed in myself.
Yes.
I espouse to be this type of person.
Yeah.
And now I've hit something that doesn't fit with my values. Now as a therapist, I have to sit in a chair now and think about how do we put this back together so that this person has enough courage and enough want to go, it's okay.
Yeah.
That you made a mistake. I'm very glad that you're willing to admit the mistake. That's where the power is. And then I can speak about, is faith about mercy? Is faith about forgiveness? Now, and I will direct you back to your faith community for that. But even in that spot, I will say, remember, part of the tenets of what we espouse in any faith community is grace, understanding, patience.
Yes.
Caring. Your intent is extremely important. If it wasn't your intention to do this, that's a thing, right? So it's those little pieces of healing, that triage.
Yes.
That I can do in that chair to be like, I bet if it's a good faith community and you went there and said, look, I've fallen short.
Yeah.
Most faith communities, they'll talk to you about it. Now, I always tell them, now I send you in, I can't guarantee what they're going to say.
Right.
So if it comes to the point where you made the attempt and you didn't feel supported, then we're going to have another discussion.
Yeah.
But you possibly could go back to your faith community and say, look,
Yeah.
I know this isn't right. I feel it, I apologize, and I want to do better.
Yeah.
And at least most faith communities I'm aware of are pretty good with that.
Yes. And I relate to the concept. I remember 2 years ago. Again, I'm 18 years into my faith journey, and I remember having this struggle in my life that had really never come up in my whole Christian journey. And then I'm like, hey, like, how do I even view this? Like, because, this one area of my life has never been a struggle. It's a struggle right now. And like, can a leader, have this struggle in his life? And like, how frequent is this struggle permissible? And like all of this, and then again, talking to my wife, and then talking to the church leader, and the hardest conversation was with the church leader, because I was like, hey, like, it was getting to a point of, I don't know how serious this is, but I'm okay not being in any kind of leadership if this disqualifies me, and I'm okay with that. But I found what you said right now. I found grace on that other side, saying like, yeah, like, we don't want this to be like all over your life, and this is we don't want you, but it's permissible. You're allowed to be human.
Yes, okay, not to be perfect.
Yeah, you're allowed not to be perfect and still lead. And I was like, oh, because there was such a rigor for me. Again, it was 18 years and never having this struggle at all. And then all of a sudden, like, where did this come from? And again, it was that identity. Like, hold on, like, I help people not to do this, but I'm doing this. Like, and trying to figure out all of that. But there was a lot of freedom in talking to people that I at least wanted to talk to about it. And especially it was like, the church leader who was over the region of the church that I was in. So, I relate to that, and I could see how it could mess with people like that.
Yeah, because it's so important to them. I mean, this is, usually it's a very tight and intimate connection with your faith community.
Mm-hmm.
And when it is disrupted, you can see a lot of struggle. Yes.
Now, related to this, have you seen situations where people go through a deconversion and they are disavowing their faith?
Yes, I have seen. Let's go this way. I have seen both deconversion, reconversion, slight conversion, divergence, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of levels of, I was more this and now I'm less this.
Yeah.
I'm less this and now on Tuesdays and Thursdays this seems to fit for me. I really see the whole, and it's so. I believe it depends. Like, had you gone to that faith leader and that faith leader, let's say for that particular day, was not feeling it.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no, Derek, we don't think that's a good thing. That really actually has long-lasting repercussions on the way that Derek views the rest of his trajectory.
Yeah.
So for me, I kind of try and stay right in the middle and just watch where they're kind of moving. As long as you're not harming yourself or others to some extent, it's normal that we would move on more or less devout.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have seen atheists turn into Christians and Christians turn into atheists. I have seen every mixture.
Yeah.
And I can't really say there's any commonality to it except for they decide for some reason based on their life trajectory that this makes more sense to them.
So let me share with you a theory, and if you're watching, let us know if the video. I know one of my computers is a little bit slower that I'm going to be replacing. If you're seeing the a glitch, let us know in the comments so I can monitor that for moving forward. But I did want to ask you about within the realm of deconversion. I have a theory of what happens with some people when they go through a deconversion, depending on their theological position. So I'll give you one of them. One of the theological positions is once saved, always saved, right? And there's different religious groups who will be on different side of the fence. I happen to be on the side of the fence who does not believe that. In other words, I believe someone can be saved for a period of time. They can choose out of that. I would be on I believe in free will. People can choose out of that relationship. And it's not like immediately. It's not like if they mess up once and they're out. But ultimately, they could disavow God and disavow the faith, and they go a separate way. And hey, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a God believer. I'm atheist or I'm agnostic. One of these things. And so I believe that can happen. Now, the theory related to mental health that I want to bring it back to you with is related around this part. Now, those groups who believed once saved, always saved. In other words, once person's in there, it's for life. But when they have somebody who disavows or checks out, their kind of leadership structure will retroactively claim that their first part of that Christian journey was inauthentic. They weren't the real thing, which I think that robs people of dignity, and that's more problematic than my side of it. Like I'm saying, like the idea of you making that claim, that broad stroke of robbing them of the dignity that they weren't for real during this portion because they chose, because you kind of have to believe that if you believed once you're saved, you're always saved, right? So I'm curious your perspective, from a mental health perspective, or even like whatever, your perspective in hearing that. What do you think about?
That is, well, I mean, this is typical of anybody who's like related to sport. Look, I know you're a sports fan, right? How many folks do you know that you pick your favorite basketball star, whoever it is, and when they reach a certain level of acclaim, you might hear them say, well, I liked them better when they were just this or that, and now they've sold out, or they've gone corporate, or now they went to the team. Wait, weren't you the one yelling for them the loudest when they were making them baskets back in 19 whatever? And now you want to give away the jersey. Seems like something going on with you.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, if I went back to whatever and went, hey, were you playing just as hard back in 1993 as you are now?
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah. So when somebody claims that you're inauthentic, methinks you protest too much.
Yes.
Right? Like, who are you to decide the authenticity of my attempt? You know?
And it does seem to be like this desire to fit. Like they have to explain it somehow to hold on to that position, right? If nobody could ever leave the faith, that means they were never in the faith to begin with. That's the only way they could leave. And I'm just like, it's and I've seen even public figures who, have their own pod and they're like doing big things. They've talked about like the pain that those people have caused them. And I'm going like, you have that principle. It's the do no harm.
Yep.
And I think
non-maleficence. Yeah. Like I can't.
Yeah. And it's like, let's, again, I always think about it from the Christian perspective. Like, let's not be doing harm when it's not like it's a harm just to hold on to a theological position. And I don't find it of value. So
I think that's the best way to do it, because I think people will be open to discuss it with you. People who are really strict and stringent in any form will have less people willing to talk to them.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the religion stuff. Any other? So we had the Christian stuff related to that one. All right, let me ask you about another trend I wanted to dig into, which was about dating apps. So
this is great.
A mental health perspective, a health perspective, wherever you want to tackle that from. Do you see that as a net positive, net negative? What's the mental health impact of some of these dating apps?
This is great. I think we're in the process of this at the moment. I get a lot of people asking me relationship questions, and a large majority of the young folks, now I'll consider young 20 to 30.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're in the dating pool. And I now get more heartbreak as a result of, I had a date on Tuesday, but they never showed up. Or, I chose them, I swiped the right way, and I thought this was great. And so they get more choices. They click more people they like. They also get more rejection. Because on the surface of it, I always say, well, how much effort do you really have to put into getting to know? Right? Now, this doesn't poo-poo social dating apps as a whole. I think it can be very advantageous for some people who are busy and don't get a lot of chance to work. But you have to think about delivery is important. And the way in which it presents to you psychologically. I have an unending stream of people who I like, and I can just keep scrolling until, that's going to do something to you psychologically. Yeah. To be like, well, how am I supposed to, again, scarcity creates value. Well, if I don't have an opportunity where I just continually scroll until I pick somebody that I like, that kind of sets the brain up to believe, well, it's always available.
Yeah.
But then the flip side is you may get a lot of people who don't like you back.
Right.
And how does that feel for you? You know, so it depends. I think you have to know a lot about your own feelings of self and how much you can deal with that. Because some people don't deal with that kind of rejection really well.
Then do you think the people that do deal with rejection really well, they probably wouldn't go to therapy anyway? Or not necessarily?
No, I think, look, in matters of the heart, people will go to therapy, even in other times where they wouldn't go to therapy. When your heart is hurting, you're more likely to.
When you say heart matters of the heart, you're talking about romantically?
Romantic relationships. When things don't go well.
Is that what it'd be a top 3, like as far as motivations for therapy?
Yeah, I think a lot of therapists will tell you between the hours of there are a lot of voicemail machines on therapists' machines between the hours of 12 and 2 on Friday evenings in the morning and Saturday, right? So there's this time where either they're going out or they've come home, and there's this weekend time where if things don't go well, they're more apt to call the office and be like, hey, I was just wondering if I could get an appointment. Now, when you call back on Monday or Tuesday, sometimes they don't return the call. So there is this thought, like when something is important enough and you want to fix it, you'll do that. And the matters of the heart tend to be particularly egocentric. So it becomes very important for you to figure out what's going on here? What's wrong with me? How come I can't get the person of my dreams? Or, you know, how come I'm being treated this way? That's a very it's a very real thing to pull people into therapy. Now, the other thing with that is it may not last that long because you may not be in that kind of pain for very long. Or once things start going well, they go, oh, I got it. You know, I swiped right. We went to Starbucks. It was great. Well, I'm going to see her next Tuesday. And I'm like, once? You know, I mean, look, man, got to play the averages. Well, all right, here's my number. If it doesn't work out, you know.
And are there, because you mentioned the element of therapists, are there overnight therapists? There have to be, right?
Yeah, there are some therapists who keep late night hours.
Yeah.
They go to like 10 p.m. There's a whole, like, you could finance a career on an after-hours therapist. You really could, because some people don't get off to work till late. Some people, that's when they really get into their, you know, I know you're a night owl by trade, so am I. A lot of my deep thinking comes between the hours of 10 p.m. and 12.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I'm kind of most cerebral and kind of thinking about things. So a lot of people are moved to do things outside of business.
Yeah.
Business hours.
And are therapists that are on call?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And is that just come with the premium price, or how does that work?
That's why you see a lot of these places go now. If you don't want to talk to a therapist, you just text them and they'll text you back. Now, that's not a modality that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
But notice the difference between me, a seasoned therapist, and an unseasoned therapist. The unseasoned therapist would be like, well, texting, that's trash. That's not really real therapy. If you want real therapy, you got to come to my office. And
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, therapy is not in the hands of the therapist.
Yeah.
We don't determine what therapy is. I have skills. I can determine what therapy is. If they don't want to see me or they only want to text with me, which is maybe how some of the millennials are coming through, they'd rather give me 12 emojis than sit in my office. And if I don't like it, I should step aside. Honestly. See, this is the difference, is that I let that ego go a long time ago to be like, well, if you're not doing therapy my way, then you're not going to get better. No. That's the I call it the Blockbuster model. Remember the video stores when we were like, we don't like you charging us late fees, and they went like, yeah, well, we're still going to charge you late fees. What happened to Blockbuster? Anybody still got their card? Because there's no more tapes to be rented. You keep messing around and keep telling people how you're going to deliver their service when they're telling you we're young. We want to text. We want to date. I can't tell how many parents. Well, what'd your parents say? My parents said I met on plentyofchristians.com, and that was cool, but that's not the same thing as going to a real date and meeting with a real person. I said, well, are they dating them? Well, no. Look, just because you're not comfortable with it doesn't mean that's not the way that they communicate. I know a lot of the young folks have friends across the universe that they play video games with. and they say, those are my good friends.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, I need you to say, okay, that's really good. I'm glad. What's their name? Oh, good. Glad. I'm glad you do. Like, back in my day, we had real friends that came over and had watermelon when mom cut it up. And if you don't have watermelon, you're
Yeah.
not a real friend.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you about something you had said. What was it? I might be spacing on it. You did mention the delivery or the mode.
Mhm.
So then
Technique.
are you 100% online? Do you still do in person?
I went back to the office. I did.
Did you? Do you?
I do 3 days a week now from home,
Yeah.
and I do 2 days from an office downtown
Oh.
because I need the personal connection.
Yeah.
You know, for me, extremely extroverted, you can only sit in the house for so long. I can only sit in the house for so long,
Yeah.
right? And I found a lot of people going, are you back in the office yet? Because I'd really like to come in. They're craving this sense of like, look, we work from home.
Yeah.
And they just want to have audience.
Yeah.
They want to have somebody in front of them. So I went back to in office. And I don't do it, as much as I did it before, but I like that mix
Yeah.
of in person versus that, because that's what they're asking for.
Gotcha. And one thing I saw with you, I think when we interviewed before about it, I forget if we talked about it on the pod last time, but we did discuss. At least at that point in time, you were like, "Hey, I'm not showing, the wheelchair. I'm not showing that. Like, hey, that's not visible." Yeah. And I remember myself, and I think probably other people had said as well. I said, "Hey, if it was me, I'd show it. It's just part of me or whatever." So, but then I just scrolled recently. I got on your Facebook. I was like, "Hey, like what's the latest?" I said, "Oh," and I started seeing it more. So, talk to me about how you decided to, reveal or for that to be something that was visible.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I did it consciously to make like a decision. I think, it's like, look, probably if you're looking at a regular Facebook page, you're going to see me more just as me.
Yeah.
Right? But I think still, at least in the executive space, I tend still to headshots are the thing.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be doing headshots. I don't know, a whole bunch of full body shots.
Yeah.
And I still find that to be, again, with the populations that I work with, we're talking Fortune 500 companies. Sometimes I feel as though the presence of something that makes you look in their eyes not as whole can make the difference. I think as I get older, it's mattering less and less.
Yeah.
Just because I have varied streams of income.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, it's not as, but I was very conscious of it in the beginning and still am in some aspects.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends. I know that people say, well, we've come a long way and we have all of these, equality and inclusion things, but it's one thing to say it.
Yeah.
And it's another thing to kind of imbibe it. So that if I go into your corporation or your company, I should be able to feel it. So if I come in there and it doesn't seem welcoming, if I look around and don't see a whole bunch of things that reflect something that would be in my lifestyle, you fail. I don't care what's written in your principles or your mission statement. If I go into your boardroom and there's no space for wheelchair, for instance, if they're all certain types of desks, that tells me something.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it says, okay, we'll make room for you, which is a lot different than, because what it tells me is you didn't expect me.
Yeah.
And that's the real thing of inclusion. When I come in, you expected me. Look, there's a space for me here. This looks like you want people like me to be in this area. I think we have a long way to go for that. And we're a lot of the research now with the diversity and inclusion stuff is showing that you can make a lot of people mad by continuing to just say, these things are important to us and you should. And then when you're doing trainings and whatever, it really upsets a lot of the people who are in that training because they aren't seeing anything that reflects it, but they're having to go to all these workshops. And I'm not saying workshops aren't good.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, look, if you're going to do that, there has to be something in the area that reflects what you're talking about.
Yes.
And I wonder about that. I see a lot of shortcuts being taken.
And how do you measure success in each of those worlds? So how do you measure success as a therapist? How do you measure success as an executive coach?
That's a great question. Success as a therapist, I think I want to be known as someone who is helpful.
Yeah.
So number one, was this helpful for you?
Yeah.
Great. If you tell me, if you come back, if my clients tend to be long-term clients, that says something. That means that we're cultivating a relationship of trust. That's how I would generally see it. If my name is on other people's lips when I'm not present, if my name is spoken in spaces and places that I'm not in, successful.
Come on.
Successful. Now, coaching, that's a 6 or 7 year, I'm kind of still a baby in that space. Coaching is easier for me because generally when I go into my clients, I go, what do you want to learn? What do you want to know? What problem do you need fixed? And they can tell me pretty well. And so I'm able to deliver to those particular, and we discuss what it is, how you know that you'll get it before I leave here.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want to do is walk in, do it, and then be like, well, that wasn't what I thought it was. Then that's a bad on me. I did not correctly assess.
Yeah.
And we did not do that together. So coaching is more of a goal, and therapy is more of a awareness, and understanding, an experience, a comfort, a trust. I mean, that's the way I would. I'm sure other therapists would be like, well, it depends on how many clients. I'm like, I'd rather have 3 really good clients than 9 who aren't really interested and only, come because their people tell them they should.
Yes. And then so I remember something, in a session with you, and I sought you out for therapy. Number of things going on. One, it was really helpful, and maybe it was helpful for me. There's a couple of things that I want you to respond to, and like how you navigate it. One is what I was looking for was somebody outside of my religious spectrum, like I purposely I don't want to go for a Christian counselor or a Christian therapist, because probably some stories I'd heard about the usage of scripture, and if I'm somebody who have a pretty thorough understanding of scriptures, not all knowing, but that's an area of strength and an area of expertise that's been cultivated over the last 20 years. So there is a sensitivity if somebody's using a passage at a context or in a way that it really wasn't intended to be used. And I'm like, I find myself with more dissonance in this relationship because you're using that passage and it's kind of out of pocket, or you're making this a little bit more spiritual than I really want it to be, because I kind of know, the Holy Spirit does things. Yes, I know what God's doing. Yes, I know the sovereign plan of Him. But I know those things and I have access to that stuff. But I just need practical stuff or whatever. But so you, I think so. You have a unique position. I think what you did say on the last pod we were on was it's about the relationship. If we have a relationship of trust, and so many magical things can happen in the therapy setting. And I was like, I feel like you had that. We had built that on the pod and having several conversations. And I'm like, hey, this person's outside of my world, which I think is something that I didn't need. I needed somebody who was outside of this, and not to say that you clearly have a religious background, but that's not something you brand yourself with. I'm a Christian counselor or anything like that. But all of that to say, it was really helpful finding somebody outside of the different pockets of my communities to be able to discuss things in a really frank and open way that I might not if I knew somebody was in this community. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep. I think I have something to relate this to in terms of being a coach right now. One of the things that even I struggle with in my personal business of running a coaching practice is money mindset still. And the thing I know I need is money mindset information. The thing I most am afraid of is money mindset information, because I'm always afraid somebody's going to deliver it to me in that, that used car salesman kind of way. You know what you got to do? You just got to commit to it, and you got to spend the money, and and I'm like, I know that's going to grind on me. I know that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
going to be what I need to, but it's because of my preconceived notions of what I believe
Yeah.
a bad coach would be like.
Yeah.
And I get, this goes to the relationship. I really want somebody to be like, Mark, I understand that you were raised as a therapist. So we're always taught as therapists to like be as tiny as we can. Like, don't spend, don't do, right?
Yeah.
I need this relationship. Somebody who understands me enough to go, look, he knows the books. He's read all of it. He knows about that. But let me just really speak to him as a person who's in this relationship,
Yeah.
a friend that cares about me, to say, look, I make a lot of money and I can show you how to do it. Here are some possible ways to do it that have worked for me, but I understand that it's not going to work for you. So I too, like, I instinctively know what I need to take my business to the next level. And now the question is going to be, who in the world, because I'm going to act up a little bit when they start using things out of pocket, right? And you're going to hear me say, hey, do you realize in the last year, all of the things that I have been through, financially and emotionally, and if you just pull out chapter 3 of the next big money book, I'm going to punch you in the throat. You know what I mean? Because it's insulting to your intelligence to be like, look, I got here. What I need to know is how to take this to the next level. And don't give me any trite, for lack of a better term, money scriptures that you think are going to speak to my situation unless we have a relationship.
Yeah.
If Derek says it to me, I'm like, Derek knows me.
Yeah.
So whatever he tells me is going to be measured and thought through. He's not just speaking because he wants to be seen as credible. But I still feel that. I know that there are going to be areas I'm going to need to improve on. And I'm just really careful about who outside of the realm will be able to deliver me the information that I'm going to need.
Right. And I was curious too, like I remember one of the first things I said in one of our first sessions was I said I might need therapy about going to therapy because I don't know if I'm like broken enough to like be qualified into this category or if it's coaching or whatever. And I think you, again, there's times when I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to get this book done. Like, what you got? Like, let's discuss. Hey, I'm struggling. Like, I didn't struggle with book 1, book 2. I'm struggling with getting it moving and doing the writing. And again, we just really talked about writing a sentence, writing the word, writing a sentence. And then like, if you flow from there, you flow from there. But like giving your brain a really, really small task and then just going from there. And I'm like, okay. And it's a concept I've read in the habit building books and I've taught in the habit building books, but like being so upfront and center about it, I wasn't able to see it clearly, and having somebody else on the outside being able to say what I already knew as a suggestion. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Again, did that work? Book 2 done, and then went on to book 3 and all that. But how does that work when somebody is in, like, we might call them a high achiever, and they seem to oscillate between, hey, this is a therapy issue, and then, oh, this is more of a coaching issue, and then moving back and forth. How does that? How do you navigate that?
Generally, I try not to move back and forth. Generally, what happens is we will reach a certain, because I always say, look, therapy is a point to bring you up to a certain standard that society thinks is acceptable.
Yes.
There is no, you're not doing it in an intensity, frequency, duration that most people would be like, wow, he's really struggling, right? Anything above functionality can be coaching if there's not a long-standing mental health issue.
Yeah.
So, and primarily the folks I work with now are high achievers. I mean, they know what they want. One of the issues, and this is how I know that it works so well, is because you have a set of things that you coach other people on, but when it is your book, when it is something so personal to you, you have such a standard of what you expect from yourself.
Yeah.
That even to get you to entertain the fact, like, what, he wants me to go into a room and write one sentence? Does he know I could write 20,000 books, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that thing of being like, look, just pretend it's not you. Pretend it's not your book.
Yeah.
The fact that you want to do this so bad and haven't means there's a block in the way. And so when we could break it down to something small and like, okay, take your expectation away. And this is just about writing sentences.
Yeah.
And then you find out, well, this person, I like to write. As long as the expectation isn't too high, the ideas
Yes.
flow from there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then
Yes.
book 2 and 3, and what are you on now?
Yeah. Book
8, 9,
four.
and you'll continue
yeah,
to
yeah.
write. You are somebody who is, you have enough to say. There will be plenty to write
Yeah.
for a good long time because it's something that just flows from you, right? So it's just a question of allowing yourself the access to that without any expectation that it has to be great.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's solid. What else did I want to ask you about? It's about deconversion.
Mhm.
Let me see here. So let's talk men versus women. So in your practice, have you seen a consistent breakdown as far as how many men versus women you tend to work with in general? Has that changed? And then, so what's that breakdown? Is it 50-50? Is it 75-25? And then also, what separate issues, if there are clear separate issues that each of the groups deal with on a more pronounced basis?
I would say 75-25 in every area that I've been in, being 75% women,
Really?
25% men. The reason is because they have a larger, richer emotional vocabulary. So women are able to express what they're feeling in words that they were taught and have used throughout their whole entire growth period. Men have 4 things. They're happy, they're sad, they're pissed, or they're mad. So when I'm like, well, how are you feeling? Well, I'm mad. Well, I understand that, but what? And is there some frustration? Well, no. And then they're crying out of the right side of their face. So I'm like, I think you're pretty disappointed. And then they have to get in touch with that. So the reason until probably I started working with executives, and then it's a 50-50 split. When I get to the executive world and the Fortune world, those men and women have understood now the importance of talking to somebody who's outside their circle. Because when you get successful enough, you have a tendency to only put people around you who are like you, which creates this echo chamber. Which means after a while, if you're very successful, you have 10 yous. And then everything that you do seems pretty okay.
Yeah.
And then when something falls, people say like, well, what about people like who are obviously not doing well? Where are their people? Why aren't there people telling them this is a catastrophe? Well, because their people are just like them.
Yeah.
So there's this dichotomy there. So, I mean, make sure there are people in your circle who aren't like you, because you're going to need somebody to be like, well, Derek, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, you're the only one. Is there something? Do we need to get rid of this person? No, I need you to keep them around because they're going to be the people to say something to you.
Yeah.
Usually in terms of issues, when I meet with men, usually in my executive space, it is about their rise to the top or their failure to get there as soon as they would like to.
The rise to the top, they're on the top or they're wanting to get to the top?
Either or. They either see something and want to get there or have been there or can't stay there. It's usually related around their
promotion,
social hierarchy.
Social, interesting.
Yeah, like I want to be this, I want to be this, I want to be this type of manager, I want to be this type of supervisor, I'm not getting what I need to get at work. That is, now it's not exclusively.
Yeah.
But generally, it circles around that. Females, I can get some of that. They are more likely to bring me social-based issues. Not that they're not striving for the top. They most certainly are. But they're willing to talk about all the other things that aren't going right. I get a much richer palette of what's going on. Again, because I think they are just more used to talking in this. If you think about it, you get a group of guys together when we were 21. And a group of ladies together when they're 21, and I put separate cameras on you, I guarantee you, if we were to watch them, you and I would talk about sports, and we would joke about farts. This is what guys, right? Like, they do guy stuff.
Yeah.
And it usually is generally pretty void of emotional heaviness. Because guys are like, look, I just want to go and hang out.
Yeah.
If I'm going to talk about anybody's failures, it's going to be a sports star. Yeah, when he doesn't sink that, I can be like, what an idiot. I can't believe they pay you $20 million and you can't finish.
Yeah.
This is amazing, right? If you go to that other room, females are socialized differently. They are allowed to talk about feelings and how it's affecting them. And I still think that has something to do with it. Yes, we've changed a lot now. We're a lot more on equal footing.
Yeah.
But we still are not allowed. Our men have very few opportunities to use emotional language, to cry in public, or to be any other emotion except mad that your sports team lost.
Yeah.
And that is still the case to this day, because I can go into any bar in America on Sunday and go, this guy, what are his stats? And most guys will go, he graduated from here. He spent this many years in this. They have a list. And I just think that's where we're losing. We spend our time as males focused on that.
Yeah.
When generally females have a wider catchment.
Yeah.
Now, as we get older, of course, guys go, okay, we've gotten married. Now we have children or whatever. Now we begin to expand, but we're late. We're late to the game.
Mm-hmm.
We're now in our mid-30s, beginning to be early 40s, and we're like, yeah, don't hang out with the fellas anymore and do the sports stuff as much. I'll watch from home, but I'm not maybe on all the sports leagues, and maybe I am. But they can still converse in this way. So I tell my guys, look, catch up. Look, I'm coming at you hard when they're like, yeah, guys, we don't talk about our feelings because that wasn't the home I was raised in. So?
Yeah.
What's it got to do with you now?
Yeah.
So that means you're going to hit the struggle bus at age 48. You not cultivate any good relationship. Guess who's more opt for suicide now? Because you got nobody to talk to, because everybody you were talking to sports with is great, but there are people in that sports thing who want to talk about real stuff, but you never talked about it. Because when guys do, they were like, oh, Derek struggles too. I just talked to him this weekend. I took your advice, and I told him I was struggling, and then we sat down and we had a good time. For some of my guys, late 30s, early 40s is the first time they had a really, really serious conversation, and it's great for them.
Yeah.
But they're late. So I think that splits this a lot. I see more females just about in every other aspect until we get to executive, and then it's kind of evened out.
Yeah. And then so break down you said the women who see you at the executive level, it's social related? Like
it's social related, and they're more likely to tell me the essence of the workplace and how that all gels together, like what the work culture is, why women can or can't succeed. They give me a pretty wide picture. It's like they're looking at it in a wider lens. For a lot of my men, it's very personalized. They pick one or two places where they're not doing well, and they have already figured out to themselves what the issue is. So they bring that to me. Well, the issue is Steve. Well, what's wrong with Steve? Well, Steve's been after my job for years and years, and it's just me and Steve plugging it out, and whoever's left over at the end, there's only one room for promotion of manager.
Yeah.
And it's going to be me or Steve. And I went, wow, you got this pretty laid out. If I'm not careful as a therapist, I get into the you versus Steve dichotomy. We're not doing that. So I need to back this all the way up and be like, all right, we're going to pretend Steve's not even in the picture, because you already came in hot at Steve. So I know we're going to spend the whole hour talking about Steve if I don't back up and go, wait, why is this promotion important to you? How's this going to better fit you?
Yeah.
What's it costing you? Are you talking to your wife? You play with your kids? And sometimes I get the stink face. You know that thing, like they're like,
yeah.
He's all up in stuff because it seems weird to them that I just told you what my issue was, Derek, was that I'm trying to get a promotion. I understand that. But what I'm going to lay out for you here is that whether it be coaching or therapy, it may not really be Steve.
Yeah.
Steve is the symptom.
Yeah.
But he ain't the cause.
Yes.
So we got to start talking about cause.
Yeah.
And most of the time when people especially because I work in burnout, and people who are like really goal-directed, they just say, well, I just got to do better at work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope.
It's it is fascinating. I like there's a part of me that enjoys delineating each of like the help fields, one from another, and like kind of how I see them, and in what I'm after, what they're after, and how those two things kind of come together. That um, the emotional, I think with so many areas of life, it seems like there's so much interconnection naturally, um, with with all of life, and for you, it seems like you're connecting the emotional intelligence to as the route toward that goal achievement and toward facilitating,
Right.
more of, at least on the men's side. So the men's side, it's promotion. There, it's, you said, how to get to the top. That's promotion oriented. How to stay on the top. That's kind of, that retaining. Um, and then on the women, so what do the women want? What is that? What are you
Well, they
seeing
still
there?
want to be successful. They just do it differently.
Yeah. Okay.
They may not compete the same way.
Yeah.
It's more of a social
Yeah.
milieu.
Pull the microphone a little bit toward you. There we go. Gotcha. Okay. They still want to compete, but it's more of a social. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think in my how do you navigate with, I guess there's a prescription element in the self-help field. Hey, like, if you do A, B, C,
Yep.
D, E,
Yep.
and then there's another element of coaching, or even that goes with some of that therapy, where it's less advice, less information, less prescription, but more helping them to come to the realization in and of themselves.
The awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then what does that navigation look like? Do you find yourself in the coaching world doing more of giving the advice and giving the game plan?
Yes, it's more goal directed.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's a script,
Yeah.
but it depends on what that person is coming in for.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think so. The allegory that I think about when it comes to some of this is one of the number one that I would probably be assessing is something like, you're assessing the value of the water that's in that one well, and the ability of that water to be able to provide nutrients to the garden of their life, to provide that thrive or that success in their life. But when I go down into that well with them, and I'm exploring what that well looks like, what that water looks like, and we're kind of, assessing the quality of that water in their well, that is their mind or is their life, is, can they describe what that is? And have I seen that prescription that they're giving themselves? Do you need a break?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We'll do a little break real quick. And let me put us on mute and give us a little bit of time here. All right, I think we're back.
Let's try it.
Mark is safe and recovered.
Yes, yes. No need for the Heimlich or anything.
Yeah. All right, we're good. Healed and delivered.
Amen.
The Lord has
Amen.
delivered this man.
Amen.
All right, so while we were on break, I went and got Mark a water bottle, and I actually pulled out a Monster. And do you still use the same assessment that you used before, the counseling or the therapy assessment?
Yeah.
Okay, so on your therapy assessment, one of the questions it asked about is how much caffeine you take a day, or how many. I forget which way it asked, but it asked about how many, I don't know, cups of coffee or different forms of caffeine do you take. So talk about why that's relevant within the realm of therapy and counseling.
Because any substance in your person that's going to increase intensity
Yeah.
is important to know. And if you don't ask the questions, you may not know. If they're like, wow, Derek is really like, he's super energetic, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and most people don't have that level of energy.
Yeah.
If it's because of caffeine, it makes sense.
Yeah.
If he's not taking any sort of caffeine and you're always like that, that may be an indication that, boy, you rev really, really, really high.
Yeah.
Like, and right now there's a lot of issues surrounding anxiety and attention. Like the ability of people to pay attention,
Yeah.
I believe, is being rewired.
Yeah.
I really think, like, in this current society with all the beeps and chirps and dings and things that we have to pay attention to on the phone, that eventually that rewires your brain. So we're already in a society that does that, and so attention is a difficult thing to maintain.
Yeah.
And caffeine is an absolute accepted substance.
Yes.
That is used.
Mm-hmm.
So we've just learned now to be like, look, if somebody's coming to me and they say, look, I have a lot of anxiety, I tend to have racing thoughts, and I don't sleep very well. And then I look down at the assessment and be like, 5 Starbucks a day. And by the way, I'm not a hater, by the way. I love caffeine. I am a caffeine freak.
Yeah.
But if I'm struggling with sleeping and anxiety and attention, which I do, I take medication for ADHD.
Yeah.
Right? But I have to be aware that, like, look, there are some days where maybe some of that is needed, and sometimes where I'm overmodulated. And I've got to really pay attention to that. So in my older age now, I pay a lot more attention to my body signs and signals that I probably wasn't doing when I was in younger form.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think caffeine is such a part of the landscape right now because, look, it's in a really nice bottle and it looks very attractive.
I know. Why do I feel just better with it, just drinking it?
Yeah,
and
no,
having it in my hand?
because it's a good stimulant, and for the work that we do, especially if you're doing a podcast or something, it keeps you awake, it keeps you alert, it keeps you right. But there are some people, keep in mind, that our bodies, they respond differently to certain things. So certain people could do that. If I actually took a drink of that tonight, I'd be up for the next 6 hours listening to my eyelashes blink. But I know that about me.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of aware of where that is. One time I had a client who had severe anxiety, and I didn't think to look in his file, and he's like, he drank, I think 5 or 6 pots of coffee a day. And so here we were treating him for anxiety, and he was getting medications for anxiety, and I suggested that he might want to cut back maybe pot and a half of coffee, because if you're putting it in your, he didn't make the connection. And it doesn't make the medication very effective.
Interesting.
If you're doubling on that side. Right? So you just got to be, it's just the questions that you'll ask. I mean, along those lines, on the assessment, this is why we put the suicide question in our assessments. And people are like, why do you think I'm suicidal? How come you ask that all the time? Well, it turns out that when you ask it in every session, it's a much higher propensity than we even thought. So the thing behind the whole thing is like, if you don't ask the question, you
Yeah.
never give it an opportunity to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
actually want to know that. If you're feeling suicidal, and I'm like, look, I'm going to ask you, how are you feeling? Or you ever feel like you don't want to be here, or that
Yeah.
you would take active steps? I have been surprised at sometimes, because some of the folks that I work with, you wouldn't think they were, and they're like, well, I've struggled with it in the past, and to be honest, recently it's been on my mind. Now that doesn't mean that they're suicidal.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah, yeah.
mean that I have to take any steps. But again, it's a relationship question to be like, look, I care enough about you to ask.
Yes. Yes. That's
And
good.
yeah, and I want people to be able to say that. But again, that's one of the taboo things guys don't
Yeah.
talk about that. Nobody asks about that
Right,
ever.
right. And I remember there was a phase of my life. I wasn't suicidal, but I felt like the words that I would use to describe some of my life and my journey would indicate. And I remember even talking to my mom or talking to friends, and I would have to say, just so you know, what I'm about to say, it doesn't mean like I'm suicidal. Like, I'm not that. Now, what was going on, which was there was a number of goals that I had achieved that were like lifelong goals, and I felt like more of my life moving forward was doing what I'd already done as opposed to something new. So and part of that might have been it was the mindset of having like a low standard of goals. I just wanted to write a book. Like, I just wanted to write one. But then if you write 3, okay, like, and then I had a goal of like, I wanted to make this amount of money in an hour as a coach by 40, and then I did that by whatever 36. And then I was like, but then the dissonance between those two things of saying, oh, I achieved this before I thought I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a concept that I had wrestled through, because there's one train of thought and belief that said, how did it describe it? It said, it's around passion, but it says, find something you love doing so much you could be so good at it that people would gladly pay you for it. And it's along the lines of, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. That's one concept. The contrast is, it's never make your passion your job, because it'll become a chore. And now these two things, and I didn't really understand that second one until I lived it. I was like, oh, because I had spent years coaching for free in the faith, coaching for free in college, coaching for free, like the extra coaching sessions that I would do at work. Let's say I had my team of 15, 20 representatives that I coached. I was paid to coach these people. But then if another person from another team asked for coaching, I would gladly accept it, knowing that there was no extra incentive for me to do so, except I'm just helping somebody. And it's a good feeling. It's a good euphoria to know that I'm helping somebody. And to saying, like, I love coaching so much, I do it for free. I would stretch myself thinner if it took that. I would sacrifice more to coach and help somebody achieve their goals. But then to make that a job, to make that part of my profession, and then begin to experiment with charging more money. Oh, like, how much money can I actually charge? And let me, move this dollar amount up and up and up and up. And I wonder how much more excited I'll be to show up for the session knowing that I'm making this amount. And then I found out, oh, I'm not even more excited. In fact, it's a little bit more of a chore to show up. But it's this amount of money. Like, it's $2,400 to show up for that 1 hour. So, but when I took that $2,400 and I was like, why was I more passionate over here for the free one than I am to make all of this money, which is a ridiculous amount of money? Like, anyway, so there is all of this. So when I would explain to you, or explain to mom, or explain to my close friends, I'm like, hey, like, I'm not suicidal, but there's an element of I achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve, and it seems and it feels like that all I'm going to do for the rest of my life is do what I've already done, maybe at a greater scale, which is fine, but there's something empty about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
there's a lot of people who are like, right now, especially in we'll call it the go-getter space.
yeah.
Okay, my go-getters are like, well, I'm not living my passion project,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore I am unfulfilled. And I'm like, look, anything you care about enough to do well, you're going to be critical of. So if you love food, if you want to love food less, becoming a chef might, because now you have to put a critical lens on it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
So
yes.
now I'm going to be critical of what I'm doing. And I think that we've been coaching people and counseling people to like follow your passion,
Yeah.
do what brings you. And I'm like, careful,
Mm.
because there are some people who are very passionate about some things that make them not a lot of money. And we can't always say the money will follow.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know that,
Right.
right? If I have a seashell thing that I like to collect seashells, and they'll be like, well, Mark, you could just collect enough seashells and eventually you'll get enough that people will buy.
Yeah.
Like, look, I know that makes a great Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
Mark
yeah, yeah.
opens up a seashell store and makes $1 million. But there's going to be a lot of failure. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of money in seashells.
Yeah.
Okay? So we've got to say, look, I want you to do your passion. And this is what I tell people. Like, if you have a side project, yes, do it. But if you're really passionate, look, if you say, look, I'm going to do this with all my life and I'm going to go live in a van, great. I'm going to say, look, go hit the road and make your album.
Yeah.
If you're dedicated to it, there's nothing I can do to stop you.
Yeah.
But all the other people, I'm like, look, can you maybe keep the day job just a little bit and then we can do the seashell thing on the weekends
Yeah.
and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because when you are that passionate about something, I watch people get very, very emotionally dysregulated when they see something that they care about so much and they follow it and then they fail. And I think this is what we don't talk about in the success spaces.
Mm.
And if we are really honest, we could say for all of the success that both you and I have had, there's a couple not so great chapters
Yeah.
of things that I kind of bid it on.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I just thought, oh, this is going to work out. And then life was like, hi, you're cute. You're cute. No, you're not going to do that. And I'm like, wait, but I'm really good at it and I like to do it. And life says, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
It's not your time.
Right.
Right? But there was nobody telling me that.
That's good.
You know?
It's so good because I can this story example. So I'll go the stories of failures or things that did not go so. And I always think an element of darkness that comes with it. So the idea is when we were doing like the small church on the south side of town, which was special, right? It was special. This is a dream. I'm given, the stage on Sunday mornings or the microphone for the Sunday sermon, and all of this is special. But again, whether it's that voice of Satan or that darkness, which is like, oh, but how many people did y'all baptize when you're down there?
You see, yeah.
Oh, then it's like okay, well, you preached. That's part of the dream. But were you as effective as other people who baptized 40 people this past year,
I didn't
or
know
20,
Satan did the
or even
PKI.
10?
Like he was really like, how many people? I want to see it. Like,
Right,
put it on the chart.
right. So then it's like, oh, you wrote the book, but how many did you sell? Oh, okay. So the book wasn't the achievement, but I wasn't even thinking about selling it. And then you have these things, which is like, so then it's all of these comparison. Again, these what do you compare it to? Like, what's the measurement of success? And then going back to, okay, well, if, for me, it was even like asking myself, like, what does fame mean to me, right? Like, and then it's that whole, like, Covey, begin with the end in mind. Like, if I can go to the very, very, very end, does it matter if 10 million people know me? Does it? Like, for me, it could be something for somebody else, but for me, does it matter? And I'm going, for me, it doesn't. Like, maybe if 7 people, to include my wife and my close family, if they love me, respect me, admire me, about how I operate because they know me intimately, then
Relationship.
that's all that matters. There's those, again, 7 people.
Relationship.
But I could have that now without ever becoming any kind of famous, without ever going viral, without ever being a bestseller. You know what I'm saying? So all of that, like that realization of going, okay, well then, if those things are true, then my time is better spent at least, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Let me go coach my niece with my brother, coach the T-ball team. Hey, we're serving the community and being with my family. Okay, so that's going to take precedence over my business during those hours, And
Service.
And then Sunday afternoon, right? So then we have Tuesday night, Thursday night, Sunday afternoon. All of that is now T-ball. But it's just reorienting. Well, I feel like I was trying to find out, like, what I would describe to some of my friends. I said, I felt like I was the most lost, saved person that I knew, So, like, I had achieved what I kind of what I wanted to achieve. But anyway, this all goes back to the whole suicide thing that you mentioned, which I didn't feel suicidal, but
Anticlimactic.
But it was a fair question to for somebody who was talking to me, which is why I said, I'll preface what I'm saying when I say for like the most lost saved person that I know, by saying that. And again, there's people I was apologizing to. A friend called me who I had spoken to for, and I spoken to, but for the last 20 years, he was talking about, we were in the faith journey together back then. He decided to not go down the faith journey route, and he called me, just let me know what he was going through in life, some challenging times. But I find myself apologizing to more people for not having been better. But anyways, there's like all of these, I think these last year and a half of like, there was an emptiness to some of achieving what I thought.
How'd you fix it?
How did I fix it? Fix, an interesting word.
Well, you modulated it, you regulated it.
Yeah, it was that. It was asking, what is success, not for anybody else, but for me? Like, what is that? And I was like, okay, like, it's enough knowing that I'm serving my family more regularly. And that was a change too. It was a conflict of values. So I'll give you another example. Sunday morning, we go to church, like strong tradition with church. Like, again, I'm talking over the last 20 years, like a 95% probably attendance ratio, right? Like, so strong in
Putting
there.
in the
You know
work.
what I'm saying? In there. And then, but now there's a T-ball game, and the games are typically on Sunday afternoon, but 3 times they're on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. All right, a conflict of values. You know what I'm saying? How do you assess this? How do you evaluate it? And I was like, according to the scriptures, they're talking about he who fails to provide for his family is worse than an unbeliever. Honoring your family, taking care of them, serving the community, that's part of God's work too. This is God's work. Let's give it a 10 out of 10 rating. And I'll say this is a 10 out of 10 rating. In other words, they're both good things. Now, your culture might be different. They might have a different kind of outlook on it. But if I'm okay living out these values that might be over here for 3 times this fall, and then being okay with that, and then moving forward and saying, there's no shame. Like, the only shame that was present was the shame that I was going to give myself. So, reassessing that, and I think there's more of that coming. Like, having people in the studio is really special to me. To be quick to listen to one of the passages, I feel like you practice as a counselor. You're quick to listen to a scripture in the Bible. So then, like, especially if it's more effective, I think, then like, for example, getting people to go to a middle week service on like a Wednesday night. It's a tough thing to get visitors to go to. It's tough to even get members to consistently go to. And I'm just wondering, like, is that really the most effective way to meet with people who are outside of, the church that I go to? So anyway, those are just kind of reassessing. What's my value system? What do I do with the value hierarchy? When those two potential value systems collide, which one wins? And are there implications for me? Are there social implications? That was the big one. Are there social implications that I would feel any kind of odd pressure to not do it one way?
And that's all good mental health positioning.
Yeah.
Right there. This is it. Like, I talk a lot about my clients about what are your values. It doesn't matter to me what they are. It matters to me that you know what they are, and that you're practicing them, and that when you do feel that there's a conflict, you make a very intentional decision to be like, look, one of the things that's we were talking about a formula in working with people who are high achievers. One of the things is when they run into a problem at their work or a goal, their idea is, wow, I've come to you now at the end of my rope after putting everything in to this, and it hasn't gone the way I want it to. And what they want to do is they're like, let me squeak another 3 hours out of this and get really into these spreadsheets. And I'm like, wait, you are coming to me because there's a problem with this. Go back home to your family, turn off the computer.
Yeah.
If you got to me by this point, burning out, it shows me that whatever we're doing in this space, although you might find it to be effective, it isn't fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Where you need to go is back to where you're recharged.
Yeah.
Which means you spend time with your partner, your family, your religious faith, your animals. I don't care what it is, but it ain't this.
Yeah.
Because this is causing you dysregulation. But the top performer says, I will not be beaten. It's a competition. I'm going to figure this out.
Right,
I will stay here until it is my very last breath, and I will go down with the ship. And I'm like, look, we don't need any more people going down with the ship. What I need you to do is go let it sink then.
Yeah.
And, and then they go, well, I mean, if I don't do this at work, then maybe they're going to, look, didn't you just tell me that it's not going well? And look, you're probably not going to get fired tomorrow. Probably not.
Yeah.
But what I need you to do is step away from this, because it isn't just jump on the grind and push harder. And I think that's a toxic U.S. thing that we're doing now. Even in the self-help space, the thing I dislike about it the most is that they assume that the reason people aren't doing stuff is because they're not motivated, aren't consistent, or don't have the drive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's in a very capitalistic sense. Like you want them doing what you think is good for society, which is achieving, making money, being prolific. What if for whatever reason the person can't do that?
Yeah.
And then where does that leave them? Right. And so what I'd rather do is in the last maybe year, I've really focused in on your gratefulness muscle. Okay. The gratefulness muscle says, I don't need any more stuff. What I do need to be grateful for is what I have.
Yes.
Because I'm really coming to think that the secret of life is being grateful for what you have.
Yeah.
Because it really does stop me then from looking about what does Derek have?
It is, yeah.
What's he do? Look at this studio. Look at how awesome this is. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have a broadcasting degree, and nothing brings me more joy than being around all these buttons, levers, and switches and lights, and I'm just like, oh, this is great and wonderful. And if I were not to practice my gratitude muscle, I would go home today.
Yeah.
And I would think, I really like that microphone, and I'd be up all on Amazon trying to figure out how to. And what I'm going to do is go, no, that's Derek's thing.
Yeah.
You like microphones too, and you can.
Yeah.
That's not your thing.
Yeah.
You'd be grateful for the 2 microphones that are already in my box that I do on my podcast that I haven't picked up, and they're dusty in my house.
Yeah.
So you see, you could still have microphones in your house.
Yes.
And be wondering why Derek has all these great microphones, and you're misled.
Yeah.
You just need to go, look, am I safe? Yeah. Am I fed? Did Derek just bring me out fresh, clear, clean drinking water that 98% of the world doesn't even have access to? I think it is the more I practice, and I'm not trying to say I've got this covered. Okay, there are a lot of ways in which I feel like, I still covet for things that I don't have. But if I'm in the right space, I can be like, remember, this isn't about get the most stuff before you die.
Yes, right.
Because I've been through this within the year, and I will tell you, regardless of how great you think your life is, when it's done, most of your stuff is going into a box in the closet. Oof. They'll talk about you really well. I'll have some things to play from Derek because he did a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
But in the end, if somebody brings all the tapes of all the things that Derek did, most of that is going in a closet to be kept by somebody who loves him, but they won't access it every day. They'll just put it in the closet until they pass away, and then somebody's throwing it out.
That's real.
So you better be doing stuff that's active with folks, because this whole thing about what am I going to get before it doesn't really work. You got to really focus that gratefulness muscle to be like, oh, wow,
that's it.
I'm fortunate.
That's real.
I'm fortunate to be here.
Yeah.
To be asked on anybody's podcast for any reason, for any amount of time.
Yeah.
You're lucky.
Yes.
I don't need Joe Rogan's podcast to be happy. I can just be happy speaking to whomever.
Exactly. And that was one of them, because, again, the success-oriented person goes results. I mean, that means, does it mean I got to have 1 million people watching it? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, or it's going... monetize, or is it the way I kind of process it now, which is, if I value listening as not a means, it could be a means to an end, but if it's just as an end, just as a function, like there is one phase in my life where I wanted to be able to say the smartest thing at the smartest, at the best time, which is like that scripture memory, right? Which is I have God's opinion about most topics, and I could give it to you, and give you the book, chapter, and the verse of whatever 66 books of the Bible or whatever, right? There is that. But then like eventually you go, oh, like actually I'm okay being the guy. We just being the reputation. Oh man, quick to listen. He's just quick to listen. Oh, okay. And it's actually something anybody could do. So that makes it, so then would I be okay potting with somebody, and what if the value is just right here and it wasn't, the world didn't see it. Okay, it would still be a good thing to do. It's a value, being quick to listen.
To you.
Yeah. So then that was again reorienting around that. So it doesn't have to go to 10,000, 50,000 people or whatever. It could simply be connecting with another human being, learning, which is another value that I have. Hey, I'm learning about what's happening in the therapy world and all of that. So that's another big value of mine. So anyway, all that to say.
Yeah, I'm always battling the two in my mind. Somebody recently asked me, "What's the nicest thing somebody could say about you?"
Yeah.
And I went, "You want my like ego answer?" Because my ego says Mark wants people to think that he's smart.
Yeah.
He wants to be seen as
Yes.
astute, because he put all this time and money into getting his brain powered up. So that'll do it. That's like people asking you to speak, right? Like, oh, he's quite educated and he speaks well. He's smart.
Yeah.
But if I take that away and I'm just working the gratitude muscle, the only thing you need to say about me and my death is that he was kind.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it. If people would come to my service and say that alone, he was kind.
Yeah.
That doesn't really, doesn't get me much value, right? But I think at the end of it all, I think that's what's really most important. That's the nicest thing you could really say to me. That's the thing I want to be known for.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't have any enemies. People will generally come to me and be like, oh, listen, he's kind. He wants to do well.
Yeah.
And that's just, it seems to me the easiest. It takes the least amount of effort.
It's true.
And it really would endear people to you, because kindness is actually at a minimum right now. Everything else is so crowded.
Yeah.
Everybody else is so much on there, like they're in a state of like tension all the time. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough space. There's not enough. But when somebody says, oh, you can go ahead of me in the line, that really kind of takes you back. Or, well, yeah, if somebody's behind me in Starbucks, oh, if you'd like that, I'll purchase that.
Yeah.
That's the piece I think that we're missing. And I know it's hard for a lot of people. I don't pretend to know to say that it's easy. But overall, I always have to fight that urge to be like, I want to say something smart. Why don't you say something nice?
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yes.
There are plenty of smart people in the world. We haven't met the quota on nice yet.
Yeah.
We got more nice people in the world. I got a lot of smart people I know, a lot of smart people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be fixing anything.
Real. That's real.
So maybe kindness? And it's trite. Of course, he's the therapist. You'd expect him to say that. But overall, it's the thing that is the most welcoming. It's the thing that brings people the closest to you, and they're willing to do things for you because they know your heart.
Yeah.
And if your heart is kind, it's just the way to be. I think you can spend all your life trying to be, and some other people are really good at being successful. Let's be honest. Some people that are just really good at being successful, and they seem happy, and maybe they are. Maybe that works for them. I can't say that it wouldn't for them because I don't know them. But since I've been in my business for 5 years, I find it extremely difficult to always be on. Watching my money, watching what I say, watching other people, you're always not quite there. You're spinning many plates. And there's sometimes where I'm just like, wow, that's just a lot to just be me.
Yeah.
That's little old me, just to be me. Whoever thought this would be this difficult? It's because you're trying too hard.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you haven't cussed yet on the podcast, so are you doing that for my audience or?
I think I did drop one on here, but
This guy was just curious.
I'm learning
Because-
to do that more. I'm learning to do that more.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be like, look, if you really have something to say, you should be able to do it. That.
Yeah.
And I, for those of you who don't know me, I love some swear words. Just
The funny thing is, it's such an emotional relief in a therapy session with you because it's like, oh, like,
he's okay with it.
yeah, refreshingly honest.
And some people will say, well, if it bothers, and I've learned
Yeah.
to ask,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
look,
yeah.
is that going to put you off? Some people, that's a lot of heat to come.
No, yeah, like my wife, she would not have that in therapy. She's like, hey, next.
Respect it.
Yeah.
Respect. So you're like,
Yeah.
look, if you're going to counsel with me, there'll be no swearing. And you're like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
You just kind of move forward. Because again, as a therapist, my goal is to fit to your life cycle,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Now, let me ask you about, is there anything else you would add into what you see trends with what men are facing, what women are facing in sessions? Like, is there any broad strokes of that you see that's unique to the gender or what they go through individually that would be helpful for people to be aware of?
Oh, that's a loaded question for sure. Like I said, right now, the thing is with the leaders and executives, it's almost like there's a pattern that you have to be in this world of executive goodness to be successful.
Yeah.
So I think toward the top, it's almost like a funnel at the bottom, and then it gets real specific at the top. So even between the men and women now and where I've spent my last 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
they're very close to each other. It's like they've conformed to a certain level of
an archetype.
Yeah, like we all have to be assertive. We all have to say these things. And they're right. This is a very exclusive club. As much as we'd like to think that we're not, it's very formulaic. Just like I say, corporate in general, and maybe corporates don't like me saying this. The good thing about corporate is that it's very formulaic. The bad thing about corporate is that it's very formulaic. Every issue that I deal with in my coaching practice can be assessed by 8 kind of structures within the corporate mindset. There are so for all of the corporate people who think they're disruptors in the industry, you're not. You think you're innovative? No, you're not. You think it's strategic planning? No, it isn't. It's probably what the CEO has decided, and now they're passing down to the other people. That's not strategy. There is no independent variable or variable that you're moving, that you're taking a hypothesis on. This has all been planned out.
Yeah.
So I think there's a certain sleight of hand when people get to a certain success point of CEO or, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you make. If your partner leaves you, you're going to be sad. If your children aren't happy, it's going to take a toll on you.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of money you can make or success that you can get. By the time you come to me, we're on equal. And all you want to do is want that pain to stop.
Yeah.
So I implore everybody, I don't care how high you get on your journey, remember you'll see those people again on the way up and on the way down, because nobody stays on top forever.
Yeah, that's good.
We're all getting older. We all decrease in functioning, both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So to not be aware of that now is going to be your peril. This is where the kindness thing works out.
That's right.
Because you won't be CEO forever. I hope you have a nice long reign. I really do. I have I'm not casting any dispersions here.
Yeah.
Right? But just be understanding that this is it's a very easy place to fall from.
Yep.
And so if you aren't humble in that, we'll talk. And it'll be known. The great thing is I sit outside of it and I get to see all these other companies doing these things, and I don't work for any of them specifically. I get kind of like the bird's eye view of seeing the
100%.
And I know that the minute I would agree to any of these companies that said, why don't you come work for us? We think it'd be great. I'm sure you do, because once you sign my check, then I have to be careful of how I say what I say, and I always think I do justice to both sides.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take anybody's side over anybody else's
Right.
side. But there's something about me not taking direct payment from that company specifically that really allows me to be like, I'm not sure, Derek, that this is the best track for you, but if you tell me this is where you want to be, we're going to keep you here and we'll work with you as long as you think is perfect, right? I'm not like coaching you to get out and, do, but if you come to me and be like, hey, I got this thing.
Yeah.
I really want to do it. What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm like, I know a lot of people who do it and they're really, really happy. But you're going to be busy.
Yeah.
So be ready for that because it's a trade-off.
Right.
Right. But if you want to get there, let's move.
Now, in your experience, what pseudo therapists are doing the most damage out there? Like, because naturally you the real thing.
Oh.
You and your people are the real thing. But naturally you have. When I say pseudo therapist, I'll define that for anybody listening, and for you, the idea is maybe the hairstylist at the salon might serve as that therapist. It might be a friend or their family members, their mama or their daddy, or even their kids for some reason, they're serving as a pseudo therapist. It could be a sports coach or even a minister or any kind of religious connection. They often can take the role of therapist. So which one?
I'm going to throw you a curve here. You're not going to expect this.
Okay, go ahead.
So get ready. I think some of the best therapists in the world, not licensed, are barbers, religious leaders, bus drivers.
Bus drivers, that was a curveball.
Janitors. Because these are the chances of a person needing help and getting to me are much less likely than them going to their barber and be like, let me tell you what's going on in my house.
Yeah.
And so I have quite a few barber friends who are like, you wouldn't believe what people tell me
I know.
in this chair.
Yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, I do, because this is where the therapy goes down.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be honest about it and you're going to say. So, but I will give you this. If by pseudo-therapist you mean somebody who is adhering to a strict idea of what they think and they're going to give it to somebody else as a prescription, well, what you need to do is you need to drop this person, or that'll do damage. It isn't necessarily in the person, because some of the best therapists there's a grandma, there's an auntie, there's an elder, there's a religious leader. They're just smart. You don't even know how they got that smart. They're just they just know what they know.
Yeah.
And if you are lucky enough to be in their presence for any amount of time, you pick it up pretty quickly. Like, oh, they're laying it down. Yeah. Right? So I never say that just because somebody has a license to do therapy, that they're the true therapist and that somebody else is the pseudo-therapist. But watch, if we could just change the thought to pseudo-therapist to somebody who believes that their way is the right way, then we have to be careful. That's the one thing where they're like, well, no, you just need to do this. Yeah. This is just the thing. And it's like, no, you have to know Derek. You have to know the relationship with him. You have to know what he, if I were to sit with you and then be like, oh, religion, this or that, that would destroy the relationship, because that's something that is a value to you. It's always been a value to you. You've lived it. People see you online. You speak about it. You do it in your spare time. This is what you do as a love. You have to have somebody, I don't care who it is, but they have to value you in all of those aspects.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. That was a curveball.
Yeah.
It was a curveball, and then you made it about a practice as opposed to a role.
Yep.
And that prescriptive one is good. Is there any reversal in that? Is there any time, like, when do you, or in the therapy model, is it pretty much no prescription? Is it pretty prescription?
No, you can be, I'm pretty goal directed, because look, most anxiety and depression is the common head cold of the doctor's world. Like when you go in to see your general practitioner, and you're like, I got the sniffles, and they're like, look, we just did a couple assessments. I need you to go home. Need you to rest. Drink a lot of water. You're right. There's a prescription there. And there's a large majority of that in mental health that's very prescriptive. Yeah. I need you to eat well. I need you to exercise. Yeah. I need you to have a good social network. And I need you to sleep with some regularity and not be ruled by your phone, because that's going to mess up the brainwaves. right?
Yes.
Like, so there is a prescriptive.
Yeah.
It should be a little bit of both. It should be prescriptive.
Yeah.
It should be taking into the relationship.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should be able to ask you, okay, Derek, what's really important to you at this time?
Yeah.
Is this the most important thing? And then there'll be, yeah. But if I'm the doctor who's being like, look, you need to do it this way. This is the only way that weight loss happens.
Yes, the only way. That's where.
Look, this is the most effective way that I've seen. Well, that's just because you saw it. That doesn't mean it's going to work for me, right? And then you got a 90% chance that that person's going to walk out of your office and not do what you've asked them to do.
So let me ask you about that. I've become maybe agnostic about this topic.
Okay.
Persuasion. I might be a persuasion agnostic, although people might describe me as persuasive. So the benefit of coaching, maybe you could speak on the therapy side. And therapy and coaching that you could speak on, and friendship side. So we have so many one-on-one conversations. So I'll speak on my side. So as a coach, one-on-one conversations. As a spiritual advisor to people, one-on-one conversations. As you know, in different capacities. As a friend, as a family member, you have these one-on-one conversations. And if you were to take some of that data, and this rough data I'm talking of, this rough data of Derek Guajardo's case studies, and I'm looking at it all, and I'm going, the number of times that I've given what I suspect as the best route for them to take, but they were resistant to it. I've never seen that work out well. But the times where I took a more client-centered approach, asking the questions and helping them to create their own solution that I probably would have given them anyway, but it's like otherworldly. The idea, it's like, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of a contrast in data of this principle of helping them to solve their own problem as a form of understanding and moving in that direction compared to giving them the solution. Like, do you see the same thing, and what are you seeing, again, professionally and even maybe not professionally, as believing in persuasion versus not? So in other words, I don't know if I believe in it anymore. I'm minimum I'm agnostic, maybe atheistic in the sense of like atheistic toward persuasion. But the idea of I don't know if I've ever persuaded somebody who didn't want to be.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not even persuasion. That was like, maybe what Robert Cialdini might call persuasion. They were persuaded.
They were already coming to your event. They wanted to believe.
Somebody who pays for coaching or for you pays for therapy and or coaching, like they're already primed in the direction for the whole conversation. I'll still use the approach of client-centered and ask them questions to help them move toward. When you were coughing earlier, I was talking about the allegory of the 3 wells. Well number 1 is you're assessing that water, if this water is able to be used to thrive in their life. You're just asking the right question to see what kind of prescription they would give themselves. Ultimately, if they're not able to prescribe in a way that I would deem has worked effectively, I would go, okay, maybe they need to consider the wells of other experts in the field. These other books are experts, what they've considered. And then the last well would be my well of, hey, what I've seen works in my life or in the people around me or my clients and stuff like that. So you have these 3 wells. But all of that to say is I am more doubtful about persuasion than ever before, specifically persuading somebody who does not want to be persuaded. I don't know if I've ever seen that happen. What would you say on your side?
Well, I know a little bit about the research on this.
Okay, give it to me.
So here's what you're going to, because we have to, in therapy world, we want to know as therapists, what is the greatest way that we can help our clients heal? What's the...
Yeah.
It's like, look, if I'm a stand-up comic, I want to know what jokes are funny before I come to the stage, because I got 15 minutes, and if I open cold... and I don't catch you in 50 minutes, you ain't coming back.
Yep.
So do the research and tell us, what really is therapy? Why does it work? There are a couple things we know that work, guaranteed. Number 1, the doctor wears the white coat not because he's cold. When he comes in the room and he has the stethoscope, or she has the stethoscope in the white coat, that is a plea to show you that...
The authority,
The authority.
Yeah.
That works. So... has this person been sanctioned by the tribe to heal? Yes, they have. Good. So your propensity for cure just went up. Now, we haven't done anything yet. So I ask you, Derek, you're at the foot doctor. You got a problem with the foot. I'm the foot doctor. Do you believe being at the foot doctor is the right thing for a person who has a foot problem? And you go, yeah, I think podiatrist is where it's at. It's my foot. There, it just went up again. Right? So you've been sanctioned as a healer. They believe that it'll work. The third is the input. Is it together? Have you come to a place together to like, well, do you feel this way? Okay, have you tried this? Oh, good. So there's a little bit of understanding.
Yeah.
Here we go. Right? So you've got that part. And now maybe they're at a point where they're comfortable. They're in the right place. You said that and you said, look, I got just the right insoles for this thing because I see a lot of people who come in with these insoles. What do you think? You want to give them a try? And they go, yeah, sounds great. You have a really high chance of that person healing, right? It wasn't your gender.
Yeah.
It wasn't where you went to school. It wasn't what technique you used.
Yeah.
These are all things outside of that. So yes, you have to want to be persuaded. You could be a cynic, but the cynic is, not all cynics are against being persuaded. Some are hoping that you change the mind. But I've not been able to be successful with anybody in mental health therapy who came and said, look, I think this is a bunch of hooey. I think my family isn't into this. It's never helped anybody I know. I mean, we could sit here. The court tells me I have to be here in order to fill this out.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, now I go back to relationship. I go, look, since you're not really interested in, doing this, why don't we just look, you're here, I'm here. I got to sign this paper when you're done. Look, what can we talk about for 30 minutes? Like, I'm not even going to attempt to engage you in my hocus pocus.
Yeah.
Because you told me what you thought. So you can't persuade somebody who doesn't want to be. I mean, unless you have something really amazing you can do, like, I don't know, walk across coals or something. I mean, that might actually do it. But my kung fu is weak. Like, I don't have any therapy skills that are going to do that. So you're absolutely right. Persuasion, it sounds salesy.
Yeah.
Right? And people generally take it as that. So I usually tell people, look, I've been doing this a long time, 25 years plus. Take what you can use, leave what you don't like. If you think something is full of hooey, you can say, please, we're not going to use that. I don't believe in medications. So I know you want me to use medication as a depressant person, but I'm not going to take them. And I say, that's fine. That's fine. And then we'll just go a different route and we'll do the exercise, sleeping, which I know works by the research anyway. Now, it won't give them the same bang for the buck as the medication and the walking and the eating and the, right? Because sometimes you got high blood pressure and you don't eat all the bad foods and you still got high blood pressure because you're genetically disposed to having a high blood pressure. Yeah. So don't take your meds, and that's going to get problematic later on. But I better not say that in the first session because then it sounds like Mark's trying to persuade you to do what he wants you to do. So sometimes if I have to drop something later on, it has to be later after the relationship is like, all right, I guess Mark's okay.
Yeah. Now, when you begin to see something pop up in a session, at what point do you kind of consider it a trend? Like, is it, or do you kind of, so I want to ask you that question, but I want to ask you the question maybe that precedes that, which is, at what point are you comfortable citing something as a case study or as a reference point? Or, I'll give you an example. So let's say, we'll take me as an example, right? So, or maybe not me. So we'll take Bob. Bob has come in, his suicidal ideation, wife just left him, and then, so you have those two things. A wife left, was going to do a divorce, suicidal ideation. You have this as a reference point. Hey, how are you processing this, Bob? And you hear a little bit how he's processing. So then you potentially have this as a reference point of how somebody has gone through this. But it's exceptional. I mean, but you always want to, naturally, confidentiality is big. And you also think about like helping other people who are in this situation like this. And like, in other words, I think there can be a dignity-oriented way to honor Bob without disclosing it happened to Bob.
Sure.
But then with now Bill, he's the next one. He's going to do the same thing. And Bob, maybe Bob even has some challenges. You help them overcome them, and they might be helpful. And when Bill said, "Hey, have you ever worked with somebody who's like this?" Or maybe they provoked that. But and anyway, I think you get what I'm asking. I'm asking like, hey, how do you? Is there a number of Bobs you had to see with the same kind of situation for you to say it's a trend? Is one sufficient for you to like kind of reference it? And how do you do all of that while maintaining confidentiality in the whole mix?
Well, I never mentioned my people by name.
For sure.
Anytime you hear me say Steve or Bob or whatever, they're not really Steve or Bob.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure there's been a Steve or a Bob in my 25 years.
Yeah.
I'm not referencing them specifically, right? Most of them, the big trends are going to be around the researched trends. I don't call anything a trend unless...
Anything. So even if you've seen it 20 times, 100 times.
I better do some reading. I need to know that this is outside of just my field of reference. And usually you're talking about if Bob is suicidal, the minute you start talking about him, I'm going to be like, Bob, do you have any, how's your substance, Bob? Are you drinking at all? How's your access to firearms, Bob? You have any, because part of that is, okay, look, I know that when anybody loses a spouse and is doing these things, I know that what makes them perhaps more suicidal is access to mind-altering substances and access to lethal means. And I know that through the research. So that just isn't me.
Yeah.
Right? That's not. Now, what I won't say is, well, Bob, I see a lot of people like you and people who generally, I go, look, Bob, I can see that you're struggling. And I sit with a lot of people who've struggled over these years, and they tell me similar stories.
Because normalizing is such a big piece of what you do as a therapist.
Right.
What we do on the ministry side, administering to people, is like you help them to feel like, to know, not even feel like you're trying to tell them something that's not true, but you're helping them to understand they're not alone.
That's right. You're not broken.
Yeah.
This is a human experience. Although right now it's very painful.
Yeah.
It's very painful to you. I can see that. But I want to let you know that there's a way to work through this. Now, I can't promise at the end everything is going to be great, but there are some things we could try that are successful to quite a few people. And I've never had anybody go, no, I don't think so. Right? At that point, when you get to a certain point of pain and you're talking about divorce and suicide, you're really willing to go with just about anything at that point, just to make the pain stop.
Yeah.
I say human pain is a great persuader.
Yes.
It really does make people go, well, I've tried everything else. This doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
Yeah.
And then I go, look, we can try this. If it doesn't, what I'm asking you is to hang in with me for a couple weeks while we get this on track. Can I get you? Can I get you to agree, like, look, this doesn't happen overnight, but I'm reasonably confident that in working in this way, people find their way to a greater clarity that you don't have now, but you could have in the future. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah.
Bob's going to be like, yeah. And then he'll cover it up with like, I got to get back because I got to get back to work, or I got to do however he needs to see it. That's fine. I just need him to agree. Yeah. In that moment.
Yeah. And the reason I was asking about that is because you'll see different celebrities who are in the counseling space, maybe a Jordan Peterson, who will reference a patient that he saw. Now, he's had thousands and thousands, so it's like, even when he's specific about seeing one patient who had whatever, bipolar, and he's talking about it, it's like, I think the consensus seems to be, like, he could be talking about anybody of his 1,000 people he saw with.
They're probably 20 people all crammed into one.
See that too. So that's where it gets interesting. Where citing a case study, which might be a hybrid of several people inside of one, when you're trying to illustrate a point,
But he gets a lot of traction and a lot of following because he can present himself. He's very well spoken. He
Yes.
uses a lot. There's a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff that's great. I like it a lot. I think we sometimes, talking about pseudotherapy, sometimes we have to be careful when people then go to the entertainment side and they began to kind of proselytize
Yeah.
this. And it's like, look, I know that you're Jordan Peterson and I know that you're really smart, but those are still only the people that you saw, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And those people are somewhat limited to a geographical area
That's
or
it.
who you would see. There's a very specific type of person that would come in to see a Jordan Peterson to begin with.
Yes.
So we have to be very careful.
Yeah.
So when I see stuff, I will say, well, look, this is what we're reading. This is what we're seeing because still, and some of it still may be helpful, but I have to be very careful because people will take what I say as somewhat of a authority.
Yeah.
And it's very attracting to even me and my ego that people pay me to tell them what I think. And I always have to keep that in check to be like, be careful, because when you say things as a minister or somebody that's high up in the church or as a therapist, people will go home and do what you say.
Yes.
And they will tell other people that you said it. Even if you didn't say it, they'll tell you what they heard you say.
When in my 7 years of working in insurance, I think that was one of the big lessons we learned there, or we were taught there, is when it comes to their insurance coverages, like the implications are one day they're going to have an accident and one day they're going to call in the claim to get those coverages. And if they say you advise them to get low coverages, you know, a $15,000 property damage when they needed $35,000, and then they have the recording of you advising them saying they get the $15,000, then the company's on the line for pushing them in the direction of that $20,000 gap. So then learning as a call center representative not to be extra precise in prescribing or giving that advice because of a liability. And I sense that in the church world now more than ever, with a bunch of churches have faced a variety of public problems that have come out. And so I find myself more than ever reluctant for that prescription you were talking about earlier, and reluctant for even straight advice, and being more mindful of, hey, let me quote some of these scriptures. Let me mention what I would do. Here's the several options of what you have on the plate. Here's maybe some consequences of each one. Ultimately, it's your choice, and I would pray about that, and I would make a choice because you're going to be accountable to it alone.
That's right. And then come back and tell me what you decided.
There we go.
And I will help encourage you on that path.
Yeah.
And if they go, well, I really like Jordan Peterson, and I bought his last 3 books, and I just think what he has to say, I say, okay, good. Just know that Jordan Peterson is he's very specific about some things, and if you don't agree with him, he might have something to say about it. But if it works for you, fine.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the part where you let go of the ego to be like, look, I may know a client who I absolutely don't like any sort of anti-anxiety because that's big pharma, but they smoke 4 joints a day. And you eat Taco Bell on the weekends. And you're worried about toxicity in the system from something that we've been studying for the last 30 years and know how it works in the body. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying, look, one of these things I know it's exactly what's in this pill. The other thing you got from Bob down the street. And I don't know if that thing is shermed or dipped or twirled or whatever, but you keep saying that works for your anxiety, yet you keep coming here and you're anxious, and I know you're smoking a whole bunch.
Well, let's segue into that, which is like there's a spiritual guru world, and it's something that's connected to different substance abuse. Is not even, I don't want to say abuse even yet, but it's different substance use, whether it's DMT, psychedelics. Jordan Peterson, actually, interestingly enough, his daughter Michaela Peterson said she found God while she was on psychedelics, which I was like, that's an interesting thing. So she's like doing the Christian thing now.
Yeah.
What is your take on the spiritual guru world, whether it's crystals or astrology, a DMT or psychedelics, or even Tony Robbins has his, you roar like a lion at his event.
Yeah, roar like a lion.
What's
I mean, I guess that works for some people. I take an interesting view on this because there's a lot of therapists who they say, well, these things are good for therapy and these other things are pseudoscience, right? And the whole thing is like, look, if you're not into it and you don't research it, I will refer you to somebody I know that does psilocybin and mental health therapy, and I want you to talk to them about it. Because already me going, look, I don't touch this stuff because I think the liability is really high, and I was never trained in how that affects the brain.
Yeah.
And that's just my own personal, but if I say that to a client, even though I think I'm being helpful, what I'm doing is I'm disparaging them for that particular, because Mark Tovar doesn't believe in that. So I say, I really don't know much about it. It's not something that I research because I'm not comfortable with it, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Let me refer you to somebody who is more guru-y in those crystals, and then I want you to have a discussion with them.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm like, look, if somebody who likes it says, don't buy my product, it's not for you. Much better than me going, I don't do that. I think it's kind of witchy. I don't know what's in that stuff.
Yeah.
It just makes me seem like a fuddy-duddy old man. And I'm like, the truth is Mark Tovar never studied psilocybin. He doesn't know anything about that. He's never taken anything more potent than a Advil. So I really have no business speaking on the matter whatsoever. I'm like, out of my league.
Yeah.
You got to go talk to the psilocybin man. I know a couple people that are doing it. If you'd like to talk to them, fine. So it's, again, roll back the ego. My opinion is not important when that happens, just to say I don't do that. By the way, I do have a couple Jordan Peterson's books. I figured if I was going to say, well, gee, I don't know. If I get skeptical about something, I buy their book and I read it.
Yeah.
So that I know what is super intelligent guy.
Sure.
Some of the things that I've found him saying seem to be somewhat formulaic, and he can get very diligent about some. And I'm always careful when somebody gets really, really
dogmatic. The dogma.
Yeah, that worries me, because the one thing you can do for your mental health, if you do nothing else, is practice perspective taking. The ability of you to think, well, what else is the reason for this?
Yeah.
How else could I think about this? Extremely helpful, but you need to practice. Because otherwise you will just return to what you believe has worked for you, and then you become touting out prescriptions for everybody else, and for everybody that doesn't work for.
Yeah.
You're on the hook.
On the hook.
For that. Because they're gonna go, well, he doesn't know because he told me to go to this church, and I went to this church, and they didn't even do the thing.
Right.
And you were like, I didn't even, what do you mean? Like, we don't do that thing. I didn't even know that was a thing. Well, you said go to the church, or, it's going to be a good place, and I don't think. Well, look, you could come to my church if you wanted. I think we're pretty open. I think I'd encourage you to go and tell me what kind of church you're looking for. It's got to be a more nuanced conversation, but that doesn't really sell a whole bunch. That nuanced thing takes time.
Yeah.
And really, people who are going to give talks for money don't have time to form those types of deep bonds and relationships. Either they can't, or they just don't want to. So they go for the big ticket arenas, which is great. But you'll find that most people who are in big ticket arenas go, it's kind of sterile. And I find that I'm often off to this place and off to that place. It's the classic, I got my hit album, and now the only time I like is when I play on stage, and that's only for 20 minutes. And then the rest of the time they're moving around the U.S. They're like, I don't have a home, and I don't have a lot of relationships. So it works the same way in our field.
Yes. Question on the tendency for people to put certain professionals on pedestals, and whether it's, and I've done this with therapists, before I knew any therapists, before my friends were therapists, and, I was like, they know the mind is everything, or like the therapist, the psychologist, or then you put like maybe lawyers and doctors or whoever, and you put maybe religious leaders or, all these buckets that are on pedestals. But then like you live enough life to see anybody go through challenges, right? Whether it's therapists, psychologists, religious leaders, do you see like the Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Michael Jordan all go through divorces? You're like, oh, wait, these are all like billionaire people. So the billionaires didn't stop them from going through a divorce. And so there's like a realization, I guess there's a reality check of your heroes. But I'm curious, how do you maybe navigate that, as people might have a tendency to put you on a pedestal,
Mhm.
how do you navigate
That's
that real
interesting.
tendency to?
That's interesting. I know what happens.
Yeah.
I try and be as human as I possibly can, and I often disclose, look, I've had a divorce in the past. You know, don't think that I have all of these things together. I
Yeah.
often struggle with a lot of different things, right? But everybody says this, and everybody's got something. But for me, it's financial advisors. I'm in awe of them. It's amazing to me
Mm.
that they can, some people I know, they're like financial advisors. They may work for a big firm, and they're like, wow, you're 37. And they're like, yep, got my, 401ks and my IRAs, and they're like stocked. I could stop working today if
Yeah.
I wanted to. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how did that? I'm not even going to tell them about me because I'm such a hot mess that they would just look at me and think, oh my gosh. And then what happens if that person goes broke, or, they get divorced and they lose half their money? Like, struggle is a universal language.
Yes.
And so if you listen well enough, you will quickly figure out that those, the great equalizers of the world,
Yeah.
pain, loss, grief, they have a place.
Yeah. And then how long did it take for you to be public about that as a therapist?
Mhm.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
like, I don't remember what you and I talked about last time. I actually, it's funny is I remember you mentioning a divorce pre-recording,
Mhm.
and then I took some kind of mental note. You didn't remember, you didn't mention it as we're recording, and it might have not been a pocket for it.
Yeah.
But I'm always curious, like, was there a thought process of like it took some time to kind of come into the reality and being okay with
Yep.
me mentioning this in a public space?
Yep.
Because you mentioned it privately, almost immediately when you were here.
Yep.
But then in a public space, like, how did you come into owning that?
Right. Difficult, not as difficult as it was for me to drop out of PhD school. Remember I told you the thing that makes Mark feel most great is that he's smart.
Yeah.
So you have to battle like, okay, I did 3 years of PhD school before I decided to willingly drop out because it wasn't settled for my mental health. I didn't find a lot of value there for whatever reason. And so when you have somebody who's in a pedigree of like, this is how you survive, is you get smart so that people don't discount you and you can make a living.
Yeah.
Right? So now, fast forward to 36 years old, 37, 38. By 39, I'm once divorced. My mental health is not really good. At that point, I'm really stressed out. The balding begins to happen. Like, there's actual enough stress that I begin to lose my hair in chunks. And it's not good.
Yeah.
And all of my other mental health friends who are also in the PhD, they go, wow, we're really concerned about you. This doesn't look good on you. This is you're like dumbing down your light. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I'm a smart guy. So what does it look like when the smart guy steps out of that willingly? Nobody asked me to leave. So why would you step out of that? You're close. You just got to write the dissertation, man. You're ABD. You finished all your classes. You even passed your comps. What is wrong with you? Who would leave this? And then it's like, leave this or die. That's where I was. I was really at the point where like, look, this is not going to be sustainable for me. Is it true that people in a higher ed who are supposed to be counselors, can it be a big enough of a gauntlet that it could lead to the displeasing of your mental health? Just about any PhD student in any field will tell you that is the hardest 2.5 years they ever did in their life. It is a very top-down, driven, disruptive, abusive environment.
Wow.
And people don't know that. They think that smart people are smart enough not to treat people unkindly. That is not true. And so to be able to to like, the divorce was fine. That was something I thought, well, people go through that. What I wasn't expecting was to have to move here from a different state and be like, oh yeah, this is great. Hype it up for 3 years. And then have to be like, oh, so it's like that? Now I got to go back and tell everybody, this was actually pretty negative for me. It left a lot of issues. And you're the smart kid. Not smart in the way that you knew everything. Smart for me, look, I was a C student in school. Any smarts I ever got was because I was up late studying my butt off.
Yeah.
Because I always thought, like, well, you're here now, and if you don't do this well, that bag boy job ain't working out for you. You're not going to be stock boy at HEB. Your legs don't work, kid.
Yeah.
Like, so you better work this brain, because physically you ain't got a whole bunch to go on. Now I know as a therapist and a counselor, that was a negative way to motivate yourself to success, you know? But it worked. But I always tell people now, focus on what you do well. Don't focus on you, because that just creates anxiety and sadness. So having to step away from that and then tell people, I'm a PhD dropout. I willingly dropped out at, 30, 37 because it wasn't a good environment. It didn't do a lot for me. Yeah. And I'm okay. That took a lot, because that's a big bruise to the ego. That was a big bruise to the value system that I held. And then everybody else in my world who never reached that point, my family was like, we love you, but you're so close. Why would you? Like, you literally, all you got to do is write this paper, right? I'm like, it's a 100-page paper on stuff that's never been written before. You have to add to the body of research. You just can't write another paper. I have to have something new and interesting to say.
Yeah.
And writing is not my strong suit like you. It doesn't come out of me like that. I can do it. You put me on a microphone, I'm fine. You put me on a piece of paper, it's a mess. Like, it just doesn't flow as well, because I write like I speak, which is really good for speakers and really bad for writers. But I was determined. Yeah. And then when that didn't work out, I had to go through this whole thing. I'm like, oh, I guess even best intentions and everybody cheering you on and you having a really good support system, it can come a time where, like, look, son, just ain't your thing. Yeah. And so you're going to bow out because that's the right thing to do, because there are some people who are friends of mine did it very well. Some of them did it very well. Out of the 10 that started, 3 finished. But those 3 are very successful in what they do. Yeah. And they like it. And they're very good at it. I knew I wasn't really good at it, but that ego kept me in longer. Yeah. Right. So for that, knowing therapy as I know it, they kind of drill that into you in school. Like, look, you're gonna fail at human things. Be ready for that. So I was expecting that. I didn't expect to have a academic failure. I just wasn't. It never crossed my mind. Yeah. That it would end the way it did. And that's something I'm okay now. And now I understand the reason for it. And I still think that in my discomfort, I learned a whole bunch about myself. Yeah. And it was like, okay, good. And since that time, I've seen a lot of people and helped a lot of people through it. Like, they were always really good at something, and they got to this, and it wasn't good, and it's the first time that and they thought, who am I now? What do I have to offer? Does this mean I can't, go to that place that I thought I was going to be at? Yeah. And that took a long time. For 4 years, I couldn't drive past the university without wincing. As I drove around it, every time they would ask me, why are you sneering? Like, you got this whole face. Like, it sounded like there was something leaking from me, and I didn't even notice it. Yeah. It took a long time to be like, it's okay that you didn't do good at something you thought you were going to do good at. Yeah. I'm like, well, I had cerebral palsy. I had eight surgeries. I had 14 years of therapy. Never got me down. Not really. Yeah. Like, I was always ready for that battle. This one, and I was a full grown-ass man by this time. So it really kind of, whoa. Yeah. Like, I was like, whoa. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think the respect, the funny thing about vulnerability is that it's like the most uncomfortable thing to do, but then it seems to be what commands the most amount of respect from people around you that hear you do it. I know my respect level of people who, again, you told me both of those things pre-record last time, and then when we're going to record again, I never know what people are going to choose to bring up, what vulnerability they're going to touch, and you're gauging a bunch of things in a setting. But then for you to, bring it up now, I think it just commands more respect for me, for you. Thank you.
With you choosing to make, some of these things public. And yeah, man, I think it serves as an inspiration.
Oh, well, great.
So
Maybe that's the part of it, is that when people see you fail, they know you've been in that position.
yeah,
Because I mean, that makes me most comfortable. If I'm sitting with another business owner and be like, "Hey, don't worry, it went well for a while, and then it was tough, and then now I can have a discussion with you because I'm
Yeah.
not worried about what you're going to think about me."
right.
I'm like, "Oh, they felt that too." I get together with a group of therapists and we just did this week, where I was like, "Okay, business owners, here's what happened to me," and and they're like, "That happened to me just last week," and I was like, "Really?" I'm still surprised, even though I've been in
Yeah.
it long enough, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I feel like that all the time."
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, it's so good. I'm so glad I came out here." Like, oh, such a relief. It's still hard. Doesn't put any more money in my bank account, but at least there's somebody else riding the struggle bus with me.
yes. All right, we have 2 questions left. Number
right.
1 is, so the aesthetic of our world, you might call it vanity, but the emphasis on the outward appearance seems to be at an all-time high. There are phrases and acronyms that I'm aware of that I had no idea that I would even know and be able to cite, like again, BBL, for women, or lipo, or breast enhancement, lip fillers, Botox, these things. These are just, I was like, I even writing some of the notes for the show, I was like, what are some things that I just know? Like, I never studied, I've never read about, never wrote about, but things that would just come up in my mind that are just related to physical appearance. And then now again with all of the viral clips of even men on the men's side, hair transplants and
Yep, yep,
veneers and
yep.
steroids and TRT. So you have this focus on appearance that's bigger than ever before. How are you seeing that, and how are you seeing it affect people, especially in the therapy side? Because therapy is really like it's like diary sessions where people are being open about some of the things that are the most scary to them, or the most frightening, or their greatest insecurities that they wouldn't say anywhere else.
Mhm.
So what's your view on all of it?
Well, I think when we did COVID for a while and everybody was doing therapy from home, that changed a lot of things, because people were showing up in pajamas.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the greatest thing ever, because that's what I want to see. I want to see you at home, relaxed with your cup of coffee, with your pets around you or your partner, and just chilling, because I know then you're relaxed and we're going to get to what's really going on. I just think that, look, there are more ways for people to look at you and for you to be seen than at any other time in history. And it's always kind of been there. We've always kind of moved forward, but there is such a high premium placed on TikTok and, monetizing and podcasts and everybody. I just think it's just the place we are. For some reason, this is of high value to a lot of people. And I don't understand it, because I think it's not been my time. This is not the time I grew up in.
Yeah.
But I'm also careful not to be like, "Oh, you kids." Again, it's real easy to be like, "Oh, back in the day, we used to go to the supermarket and we didn't have to have our best shoes on." Why are you saying that? What is that? They don't even care, dude. You're 67 years old. Nobody cares what you're wearing right. So just the issue is, yes, we are being viewed a lot.
Yes.
So that's great. When I get to them in therapy, when I see them for the first 3 minutes, that may be a thing, but you would be amazed at how quick whatever social veneer you're putting on, because we all do. We all put our best foot forward. I was telling you before we went out, I even changed my shirt. I wanted to be presentable. I was going to be on camera. Look, I'm not going to wear a T-shirt. I'm going to come dressed with good shoes.
Yeah, right.
Nobody sees your shoes on a podcast, but there's a veneer, right? But if we were to engage in a therapeutic thing, all of a sudden everything switches.
Right.
Like, you really get into what's ailing you, and at that point, we don't. It's to the point now when I do therapy from home, you will catch me in a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And sometimes with my executive clients, I like to kind of do this sometimes, because they have the background that has their thing on there, and they're all dressed in their shirts, because that's what. And sometimes I can tell they kind of look and I go, hey, it's Dress Down Tuesday. I'm dressed down.
Yeah.
And I just let them know. And then they loosen up. But still, there's that thing, that executive thing. Now, sometimes when I'm doing something a little maybe presentation or something, I'll do a collared shirt. I like to dress up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see sometimes their reaction is like, oh, this guy gets to work from home and he doesn't.
Yeah.
So I can tell when they're like, But that will soon be a thing of the past. Give me 5 minutes. We're going to get into what's going on with you, and then it's going to be about you.
Yeah.
And you're not going to worry about what you look like. So I think that's why I like therapy and I'm drawn to it because, again, I said that, their pain is a great equalizer. And I feel like when I really began, it's very alluring to have that kind of intimacy with people. I have a great viewpoint into their lives. They share things with me that they don't share with anybody else. And that makes me extremely grateful that they would trust me enough to do that. But it really allows you to be effective because if you can drop those veneers, then we can really talk about what's really working with you. And I don't think people get an opportunity to do that because of what you just brought up is everybody's watching all the time. You're always being viewed by some way. Well, this is a time where it's just me and you and there's nobody else in the room. And so you can show up and be whomever you feel like you can be. And it's not going to be evaluative. I don't care if you come with your hair done. I don't care if you come with flip-flops. It doesn't, I'm just concerned about the person.
Yeah.
And so the shell, not so important. But it's funny because generally when you're wearing your stress, I can tell because you have no neck. Like people will show up if they're really stressed. They show up on camera like this. Like you can tell just by their body and the way that they present the energy on screen. You can tell what they're bringing to session. So again, this is stuff that maybe they don't show up if they're going to the car dealer to buy it. They're not there for that business, so they're not intimate in that way. But it tends to lessen when they're coming for something to be healed.
Yeah.
They're more willing to come dressed down.
Yeah. That's good. And I think the vanity of so much of it, again, I know you joked about the shirt. I think about, I was like, hey, should I lift some biceps and triceps so that, like, again, my arm will pop a little bit more?
Little
you
pop.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Little pop.
Like,
right?
just so, again, just that. And then the aesthetic for my brain is the more fit, the more disciplined, the more successful, right? And it's in this realm. And then when I'm trying to dress down, it's almost like it's also an aesthetic play, which is like relatable and down to earth and all. It's still deliberate and intentional. It's still an amount of stress and focus. But then it's again another angle to it. But it comes from the same concept of like everything is so visible.
Yep.
And everything is people are looking at it and making decisions about stuff. So there's a wrestling match. Like again, there's I've read the research about, for example, you mentioned the lab coat, which is like just the things we can do physically to make ourselves more believable as an authority, as an expert. So I wrestle with that because I know the research and I know like if my books are posted, then it adds another layer of authority and credibility. But then sometimes I'm like, I've asked myself, does it matter? Like, do I have to show you all my credibility? You know,
right?
What I'm
How
saying?
many
Like,
books I got to put up there?
Yeah, right. And it's like, which was weird when I didn't have any. I was like, if I just have one, I'll feel like. And then when you have two, and you go, like, oh, if I just have
But there
three.
is something to that. We, to have a book means, oh, he wrote a book. Somebody thought enough to buy it. I should listen.
Yeah.
So there is something that, again, when we have to parse out, like, look, if I'm in my professional sense, I need to have things around that look professional.
Yeah, right.
Right? I have to do the things that you would expect a professional counselor to be doing. I have to say the things. I have to deliver. But now to the end that you go, one book is fine. All 5 books, they're going to be like, wow, he's really trying to push effect that this boy writes books. That's all 5. What's he trying to say? Right? So there's that balance. And you're right. You're always kind of, again, see, this is the part of the entrepreneurial and the business person when your income depends on people's
Yes.
belief in you.
Yes.
Because the more people who hear this podcast and are like, oh, Mark sounds like he's well-spoken and he's smart. I think next time if I have a problem, let me write down his name. There's no doubt that people do podcasts so they can be heard.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I'm going to come and hang out with Derek.
Yeah.
Sure. I also know that there's a good chance that somebody that you know is going to hear this podcast and go, he might be a good person to talk to.
Yeah.
And to say that, well, I'm just, I would just do any podcast at any time. No, that's not true. We don't do things that we don't think are beneficial to our human self or our end goals. It's against your physiology.
And, I'll say this too, because I think I had a judgmental lens on, let's say women and their procedures. And like, and I think my lens was, I had a line drawn. Hey, once you cross over to like cosmetics procedure, like when you're surgery, I think there was a judgmental lens I had. But until I again, that empathy and walking and then going back to myself and going like, how many things do I do to edit myself? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, do I shave? I do. Do I trim? That's an edit. Do I iron? That's editing the clothes from how they naturally were out of the dryer. So like, it's not, I don't have a problem with these edits, but then so then what makes my arbitrary line a better spot to be, as opposed to going, all right, well, maybe the line isn't as important. And does it really matter? Does it really change my life?
No.
If Sheila, got an enhancement, does it really change? It doesn't. No. Now, if she wants like my perspective about like if her self-value is actually going to increase with this, if she's coming to me as an advisor and asking me about it, I'll say let's talk some more about like how you assess your own personal value.
There you go.
I get so much value from my spiritual lens, and my spiritual lens tells me it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I could be walking with God with no clothes on, you know what I'm saying, in my bedroom, and it's not like, oh, God's not, can't hear my prayer until I put some clothes on. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so there's all of that. So it's...
And realize that you were raised in a society that values males' opinions as if they should really care about what we have to say in the first place.
Yeah.
So who cares what Derek thinks?
Yeah.
About what procedure she needs. Are you married to this woman? No, I am not. Are you dating this woman? No, I am not. Keep your mouth closed. Nobody cares what you think. I don't care what you think about what she... And sometimes I do that to my guys to kind of shock them into like, it didn't occur to them that their opinion was not required.
Yeah.
Not going to be valued.
Yes,
Nobody's
yes.
soliciting your opinion. And this is why when you go to social media and everybody's kind of like yelling into the abyss about what they think, I'm like, look, it took me about a year to figure, it doesn't matter how many times I post, I'm not being called to Washington for any major political policies or an opinion. And so until that time, I'm going to not really speak about it unless I think there's a grievous error of a human. If somebody is ultimately suffering and you ask me an opinion. But again, getting back to this point that I grew up in a society that will value the male's opinion of all things at all times. Above females' opinions. They've always been told to be subservient in every sense, making less money, and so to promulgate that is to be like, I remember when my my wife who passed away, I remember one time very clearly going in, and she used to love to watch Real Housewives, and it's just her pleasure. And I can't stand arguing at all, ever. I'm like, I deal with this at work. And one day I went in there, and I was, again, Mark's opinion is important, so I began to like question her about why she's watching this and what value. She said, "Did I ask you to come in here?" I said, "No." She said, "Why are you in here?" And I was like, damn, why am I in here? I thought somebody wanted my opinion. I was really convinced that she was going to be like, you know what, you're right. She wasn't watching it for me. She didn't ask me to come in there. She didn't ask me to watch it with her. She said, "You should go." And I said, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good idea. And I turned around and walked out. And I'm like, never again will I walk in there and degrade whatever trash TV I think she's watching. That's her trash TV. She's not making me watch it. She didn't ask my opinion. I need to close my mouth.
Yeah.
And so now sometimes I'd be like, oh, I really want to. There's been so many times somebody said something out in public. I just want to jump in and say something. I'm like, I got an opinion about that. You want to know? No, Mark, they really don't.
Yeah.
They're not paying you. The people want to know your opinion. They're going to pay you for it.
Right.
Otherwise, shut it up. You don't really have it like a. I guess the time I've had something that was truly earth-shattering that's never been thought of before was about the time that I should have been writing that dissertation on whatever it was I was going to add to the new body of research. Turns out I don't have a whole bunch of new thoughts.
Yeah. So
just close it.
Okay, so then 2 more questions. I know I said 2 before. So the one that I know I had written down for you was, how do you navigate disagreement? Right. I think and let me add some frame to this, because good. There are podcasts you could listen to, and maybe it just disturbs my soul. Maybe I know for a fact it's other people's souls as well, because I see it, but it's like it's like they agree with everything that other person is saying. There's no disagreement, right? And I think all of the value of my friends is that we're able to disagree without being disrespectful, without, again, arrogance,
keeping score.
Yeah,
he's not like me. He's not coming to the barbecue because he doesn't believe.
But I was curious how you navigate that. I've seen you do it even in our sessions, and one of the things that was an interesting thing, I think, in my 30s, having a radar of, when do I need to express what we just discussed? Like, when do I express my disagreement? And when is it relevant? When is it not? And like in therapy, it's like easy. Oh, this setting is all about me. So if Mark is saying something that I disagree with, I really need to make sure I express this disagreement, because this is all about me. Now, other settings, if I'm helping somebody or whatever, I'm like, what you just said, is my disagreement relevant at all? Is my opinion relevant at all? There's the proverb that says, a fool delights in airing his own opinion, but a man of wisdom seeks understanding. Right, so it's like the fool is like opinion, but then it's a wise person who's going, I'm just seeking to understand. Right. So anyway, all that to say is, I think you navigate disagreement. You certainly navigated it with me in our sessions whenever I have disagreed or had different perspectives about whatever we're discussing. But I think I imagine you face that a lot.
I do.
So how do you navigate disagreement? And I think you do it with tact and grace. How do you?
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about that.
I think in therapy it's easy because of the lens that you just said. Like, my job in that session is to allow you to have whatever opinions as long as they aren't destructive to you.
Yeah.
Now, my job is to build enough of a relationship so that if I believe that in some way it's irrational, and it's not irrational in the way that it's not well thought out. When I say irrational thought versus rational thought means to me what he's doing or saying gets him more of what he wants.
Yeah.
Irrational would be things that he's doing or saying that isn't pulling him closer to what he wants. Now, if that becomes the point of the session where you're like, look, I really want a mate to do this, but I think this, this, and this, and you're pretty stringent, I'm going to go like, maybe it might do you some good to lessen this dogma of the way you're looking at this.
Yes.
Right? It could. But you see, it's still for your benefit. If it's just something, political difference, something I get into a lot, doesn't matter. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what you believe. Now, if we're at my house breaking bread and you ask me what I think, I might tell you.
Yeah.
But I always also approach it, if we're not in the therapeutics, even coming here, when I saw that and I read that was going to be a question, how do you deal with disagreement? I was like, well, how would I deal? On Derek's podcast, how would I deal if we disagree? I come to Derek's podcast. First of all, let's be very clear. It's Derek's podcast. So somebody is allowing you a place at their table.
Yeah.
So the very least I could do was be a good house guest. Right? So I always approach it with that, like, where am I? some people have some very different opinions from me in places that they're perfectly allowed to have those opinions.
Yes.
But they aren't putting money in my bank account, and they're not putting groceries in my fridge, and they're not sleeping in my bed. Which, by the way, that's Mark's 3 rules. I tell this to my clients all the time. Well, I'm bothered. Well, there's a couple rules that I have to kind of run by you. This is Mark's way. Number 1, do they put groceries in your fridge? No. 2, do they sleep in your bed, or do you want them to sleep in your bed? No. Do they have direct supervisory experience over your day-to-day job, work, or ability to make money? No. Then you are not obliged to care about what they think about you. But I understand that's a practice.
Yeah.
You have to get into the practice of allowing other people to have to be fallible, to be misunderstood, to be misread, to be arrogant, to be ignorant. And there's a line. I'm not saying this is all everywhere, but for instance, if I go home for a Thanksgiving meal and I have plenty of uncles and aunts that don't share my opinions, pass the potatoes. The gravy is delicious.
Yeah.
Hey, great to see you. So-and-so. Hope to see you again next year. See, I'm a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no good that will, and this is what I will tell people, because as you know, as the holidays come, some of the most stressful time of year.
Yeah.
People are under a lot of expectation, and I have to see well, you have to see them, but you don't have to say nothing.
Right.
What? You want me to go to? Yeah, I want you to go there. I want you to bring the ambrosia, and I want you to close your mouth.
Yeah.
And just watch and listen. And when they ask you something, be courteous, even if they're like, I don't know why you people do this. Yes, Aunt so-and-so. Yes, Uncle so-and-so. Well, anyway, I heard Snoopy on Ice this year is going to be a banger. You get tickets? Like, I'm just going to switch the conversation.
Yeah,
Right? I have to be comfortable enough to be like, I go in thinking like nobody really wants to hear my opinion. Now, if it's a significant other or somebody you're really close to, that's different.
Yeah.
But most of the people that you encounter and you become disturbed by don't fit any of those 3 criteria, but you are somehow emboldened to think that they should think what you think.
Yeah.
They're not put here to live up to your expectation, and you're not put here to live up to theirs.
Right.
And the sooner you can get on that track,
the
less disturbed you become, despite all the chaos
Yeah.
around you. Again, be kind, mind your business. Speak when spoken to, and even when spoken to, I'm still going to be a house guest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's solid. It's solid. I think when I think about the topic of disagreements, depending on topic, naturally, I often think about spectrum. I think spectrum has been like the common phrase it's been in my vocabulary. Oh, okay, like especially if we're talking about sensitive issues. We're talking about religion, right? Religion is an issue that often comes up in my world. So we're talking about that, like how you look at it. Okay, well, let's talk spectrum. If it's a 5-point scale, people are on the 5, people are on the 1s, and people on 3s, 2s, and 4s, and if you're familiar with enough churches, you can kind of see, okay, these specific churches are 1s, these ones are over here at 5s, and then hey, these ones are at 3s, and so I find myself referencing kind of the groups that might align with their thinking. Okay, yeah, like you think we should, even the church practice of expelling a member, like almost like suspending a member. Okay, cool. Which side of the spectrum are you on? Are you Jehovah's Witnesses are on the really strong? Maybe like a Joel Osteen will be on the opposite end. Like, I don't know if they ever do that, right? And like how they do it, and again, it's literally opposite ends of the spectrum. So all of that to say, I find myself doing some of that, but then also inviting it. Like I do enjoy thought exercises.
Yes.
But
those are understood rules, right? You're bringing somebody to the table to be like, look, we don't agree. Let's hash it.
Yeah.
Right. There's a difference there. We understand the rules of engagement. Sports shows are a great example of this. Nobody wants an ESPN radio show
this is great.
where everybody agrees that you're the greatest player ever. Well, isn't he? Yep. Okay, that's what I thought. I'm sure glad we're good together. And go into commercial. Right? There's no tension.
Yeah,
There's no tension.
Right.
So this spectrum thing is very interesting because in the world of psychology, what we study is the point at which your disagreement becomes hardening, and now you begin to depersonalize
Yeah.
people. And we've seen this again and again with all major atrocities,
Yeah.
whether it be Nazi Germany or the Hunsis and the Hutus,
Mm.
where there's not much difference between the people except some minor differences, but you get to the point where you believe maybe that, let's take political, you've seen this,
Mhm.
politically, people are like, well, if you follow this candidate, you're obviously devoid of all
Mm.
reason
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
knowledge,
yeah, yeah.
and therefore you become the other. There are some people who push that spectrum to the point where they dehumanize.
Yeah.
And if you are in that spectrum, and this is what we're talking about, the polarization of America, polarization is okay. Dehumanization, we have to be very
Dehumanize, yeah.
careful,
Yeah.
because then that gives the people who are then dehumanized, they will often be the recipients of abuse,
Yeah.
danger, right? And then some part of the society is okay. Well, those people, they don't have any sense anyway. So we
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to. So I'm gonna take them all off my Facebook feed. I'm not gonna associate with anybody who's of that ilk.
Yeah.
And it's like, be careful. Be careful. This is not the way to go. In all areas, it should be seen as a spectrum. And even if somebody doesn't agree with you, you may be suspect, but I need you to treat them with basic human kindness in all things.
Yep.
I need you to do that. And sometimes there are some times where you get behind that computer keyboard and you start, just like you ever notice when the windows are rolled up in your car and somebody cuts you off, you are much more likely to scream obscenities. But if we were on bicycles, that wouldn't happen, because there's this imaginary wall that says that person can't see me. So your body already knows if I'm close enough, I shouldn't say that, because it's damaging to the human spirit.
Yeah.
Even if they did it and I was mad, I wouldn't scream it at them.
Yeah.
But this space, internet, whatever,
Yeah.
allows you to dehumanize.
Yeah. That's good.
And you really have to watch it, because it doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah.
Because the other side will be convinced that if this person gets what they want, then the world is doomed. And it's like, that just really puts us in a bad place.
Yeah.
You can't.
Real.
You can't do that. And it's there in the research. It doesn't take a lot. You'd think it would. You might think, well, Derek, could never be pushed to that realm. There's quite a few people who are intelligent, wonderful. I'm thinking of the shootings that recently went on. I'm trying to think of what university it was that they walked into their PhD meeting and they didn't make tenure. So they opened up fire on the whole. This was a faculty member. These are people who are intelligent, and they're not, they're like, well, we need more mental health. That's not a mental health issue. It's a good case that a lot of those people didn't have a mental health diagnosis. What they had was the ability to believe that their opinion was better than anybody else. They were owed something. They didn't get it. Therefore, they had the right to retribution.
Yeah.
And they were able to dehumanize those other people, even though a couple weeks before they were camaraderie and there was peers. Well, when they didn't side in their favor, you see how quickly it went from civility to disagreement to depersonalization.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. The last question I have for you is relevant. So, you consider yourself a person of influence as a therapist, as a coach, as a communicator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the most relevant questions I think that happen in church circles is people want to know this question of like, how do you help an influential person to come to church, right? To attend church service. So while
like a high value person, like if you were to, for instance, would this be like, how do we get more San Antonio Spurs into the pews?
It could be like that, yes. In other words, right? It's like recruiting more Chiefs than is that expression even okay anyway? I don't remember. But yeah, recruiting leaders as opposed to followers. Yeah,
high value people.
Yeah. So I know the internet has a whole bunch of definitions on high value.
That's interesting. That's an interesting question.
But the question,
I didn't even know they asked that question. I thought anybody, any soul in the seat had equal value. That's curious.
Right? Which they do, and but then there's a premium.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe those
And
those
that's
two
not
things
only in
contradict.
religion. I mean, it's not right.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
I
right,
open
right,
up
right.
a new store, I want somebody famous coming into my store and eating my donuts, so I can say,
Well,
"Hey,
it doesn't even have to be famous. Again, the idea is there are opinion leaders in every pocket of the community. So like John Maxwell has his paradigm, and I've rewritten the paradigm to match the acronym change up. So according to him, every pocket of the community can be, I think, summed up into, I think, these 8 buckets of influential people. So you get, so if you're trying to create massive change in a country or in a community, it's companies and businesses is letter C. H stands for healthcare, like doctors and nurses. A stands for your artists of the community. That might be your music artists, also painting and any kind of artist there might be. N stands for your news networks. G stands for your government. E stands for your leaders in education. It might be your principals, your principals, teachers. You have your U, which is upstanding religious institutions, as your churches, and then P stands for your personnel your personnel and players, your personnel of athletic teams and players. So you have these
wow,
these 3 groups. So the idea is, if you want to influence anybody about anything, you think through these 3 groups and you try to find. So you would be somebody in the healthcare industry, right? Or you might be also in business. You don't have to only be in one.
sure."
So anyway, given
But
that,
healthcare would.
but
probably
you
my
would be a
bucket.
person of influence. So the question is so when leaders are trying to influence other leaders, because they know if they influence a follower, for example, they'll be able to influence followers, and maybe they can influence leaders too. But typically, leaders can influence a greater number of people for the greater good. So if somebody wanted to know how to help Mark Tovar to have the greatest chances of helping somebody who is like your profile
Therapists or mental health people. How do we get more mental health people in these seats?
but specifically you, like, because you could personalize you and not personalize everybody else to attend church. And I'll say my example for me in my profile, I said this to you before we started recording, which was if somebody offered me the stage and the microphone, I'm like,
there.
and it happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, a Baptist church, a friend of mine who lives nearby invited me to speak at his Baptist church. And historically, churches in the Baptists and churches that I'm associated with, they don't like each other. Like our forefathers, they don't, they think the other ones aren't
Spectrum.
saved. Yeah, spectrum. So 1 in 5. But to you and your profile, giving somebody the greatest chance for you to say yes to attend a church service, what would that be? Is it again? Mine's a microphone or whatever, microphone on the stage. What would yours be?
I think mine and most. I can speak for most therapists. I think in this point, because there's a kind of a profile that draws this particular field.
Yeah.
And most of us have gotten into this for the ability to help others, to be if you will, like a first responder of mental health, to render aid where possible, to make you feel less depressed, less anxious. So if you were to appeal to my sense of, hey, why don't you come by the church? What I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you and tell people what you do and how you benefit them. Because I know some churches are like, look, you don't need mental health, you just need Jesus. But we're not one of those churches. We like the Jesus and the mental health. And
Yes.
I would say, well, that's good because I like the mental health and I also prescribe lots of Jesus.
Yeah.
For those people who are into Jesus. Now, I might lose you on the spectrum if they're like, well, which Jesus do you? Are you King James Jesus? And I'm like, well, wait a minute now, because I need to let you know that if I'm coming to your church, I'm going to the Universalist Unitarians afterwards, and I'm going to also prescribe Buddha and whatever other deity works for those people.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, you want to get me in? Tell me about how your church supports mental health of its people. And we need to get more work together between the religious heads and mental health. So why don't you come in and explain to, first of all, not the whole congregation, because most therapists They don't want to speak to the whole congregation. But yeah, most of them are like, look, we do our things. It's quiet. It's in the office. Even though we like to talk to people, we like it on one-on-one settings. Most therapists don't want to be put in a big crowd of people and have to explain. That's a lot of empathy coming toward the stage. A lot of people agreeing and disagreeing. We're very sensitive to that. But if you're like, listen, I'd like you to talk to the deacon on Tuesday. He's coming in. Why don't you bring by some of your brochures and you can talk to deacon about, and then deacon will go to preacher.
Yeah.
And then maybe we could have even like a couple hours at the church where the mental health person would kind of be sanctioned by like, hey, we vetted this guy. We know he's down with the King James. He's not going to quote you scripture, but he's not against it. You know, just like, look, if you want to be on my side with religion, tell me that, listen, we understand that God has anointed some people to heal in ways that are adjacent to the scriptures and the teaching, but that maybe isn't our main tool.
Yeah.
My main tool is understanding, kindness, caring. Oddly enough, we'll share a lot of the same tenets that your religious organization preaches, which is understanding, patience, you know, these things.
Yeah.
And that when we can have that talk, then that's about bringing people together. So that would get a large majority of mental health professionals in your seats. Would be like, look, we're interested in coming together with the community. And in fact, there are a lot of therapists I know that are very active in their church, and they have a good relationship with and they make it very clear, like, look, we are not the church, but we go to the same church as you, but we are also here to provide those particular. And then some therapists I've even said, like, nope, that's my church. I don't want to do that. I do that Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday need to be for me and my personal fulfillment. So you have to ask them. Because I can't speak for everybody. But I guarantee that if you told most therapists to come to church to get a microphone and talk to the congregation, they'd be like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Right? Because ours is a one-on-one.
Yes, sir.
Well,
good. Well, Mark, thanks for coming, brother.
You got it, man.
I appreciate spending time with you. So we might have to do something more regular. I know we're talking about it. But man, very, very good conversation, bro. We went for 3 hours and 20 minutes. So we're doing Joe Rogan style.
Oh, man.
Which is actually something that I like. I do like the way Joe Rogan does it. His like threshold for even inviting guests. Is he interested in them? Is he really interested in them? And I think you certainly passed that qualification. And again, I'm so interested in what you do. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Maybe we'll get some more guests in here. And
you're gonna do one with me, because I really need to get your expertise on. As somebody who worked in the call center, I work with a lot of call center people who are under stress. And so maybe really hearing what are the best practices.
Quit the call center. No, I'm just kidding.
Some of them want to, right?
It's such a secure spot to be in, but it's also dangerous because you can get real comfortable with baseline pay. But it's tough.
Preach.
I have thought a lot about, is there a solution just to the call center that I was in, and I wrestle intently and just mentally going like, because you'll hear solutions that other people prop up as like what works, and then if you've tried enough things, knowing like if your people kind of feel a little bit like slaves and the leaders kind of feel like slave drivers.
The system is set up to not support good motivation, mental health.
You could try. I mean, there's things. It's like, it's almost like, I think, getting people rewired into that optimism and that gratitude that we kind of discussed. But it's
a hard life.
Yeah. It's like, how can you help people to be grateful and satisfied with less is almost the topic. But anyway, the music is about to end, brother. We'll see you on the next one. Let me press this if you wrap this up. Everybody who listened, thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one.